And therefore, the entire operation that the Russians conducted was because of his own personal financial interests and all connected to the Magnitsky case. And so it finally gave clarity to everybody in America why there was meddling. Everyone knew that there was meddling. We know it even more now. But what I added to the whole political discussion is what the motivation was from Russia.
What do you know about the now infamous meeting between Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Natalia Veselnitskaya at the Trump Tower?
Well, so Putin hates the Magnitsky Act because he's worried about his own money. And so he was looking for an opportunity to have the Magnitsky Act repealed. And the way that they exercised that opportunity was when they saw that Donald Trump had been nominated as the Republican nominee, they sent in an emissary, an agent, who was a female lawyer named Natalia Veselnitskaya. And she went to that meeting, not with Donald Trump, but with Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort. And she sat down on June 9th, 2016, and said to them, I want to have the Magnitsky Act repealed. And then we know that for sure. Nobody has said otherwise. What we don't know is what happened after she asked that. What did she offer, and whether it was accepted.
Have you felt any pressure from the Trump administration because the act that you helped, introduce is now at the center of the investigation against the U.S. president?
Well, the Trump administration has been actually quite supportive. And I should separate Trump from his administration. Donald Trump tweets out crazy things, saying offensively supporting Vladimir Putin and so on. But his administration is full of highly capable, experienced government officials. You have the Defense Secretary, Mattis, who's fully cognizant of what the Russians are all about. The UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, gives absolutely tough speeches about Russia. Even Rex Tillerson, who is an oil man, is absolutely tough on Russia. And I should point out that when the Magnitsky Act listings, the actual names came up for review and more names in December, the Trump administration, those people I've just named for you, put on some very good, high-value targets that we have been hoping for. So I don't think that we haven't seen any slippage from the Trump administration so far.
What is your ultimate goal, with your fight for more human rights in Russia and also with your former lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, and the act that followed?
Well, since Sergei Magnitsky was killed, he was killed
Ja. Okay. Gut, ich warte einfach. Danke. Jetzt hat das Script gemoved. Okay. Danke ist gut.
Open their heart to you, to peel away the layers and to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about. And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice. You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
CNN Business Traveler in China. By the end of the next decade, the largest aviation market in the world. Businesses are spreading their wings. China Eastern, keeping the Chinese skies safe. New ways to earn miles. And bridging culture gaps. On the next CNN Business Traveler.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movements and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have. It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour.
Inside Africa, in association with Zenith Bank.
In 2009, Dr. Joyce Balagade Kambugu was working with the Uganda Cancer Institute. At the time, there was no pediatric oncologist in her hospital or anywhere in Uganda. Recognizing the need and driven by her love for children, Joyce enrolled in the African Pediatric Fellowship Program.
That year of training with the African Pediatric Fellowship Program in Cape Town between 2011 and 2012 changed my life completely. It was a profound experience, and I can say without hesitation that that year changed the outlook of childhood cancer in Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to the Swiss Polls. Due to technical problems, we are going to delay slightly our broadcast this evening. Stay tuned, we will be back as soon as the technical problems are going to be resolved.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
With respect, sir, let me just stop you there for one moment. That is not the government.
And Fareed Zakaria, GPS.
We are living through a sea change in politics.
Sunday on CNN.
Given 10 minutes on the ground in the village.
Many of the statues ISIS toppled were fakes.
$500 for 2 children. Just sold off like that.
This can't really be happening.
pressure Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
Who needs these talks more? We had any government reaction? What is the mood on the streets? Robin.
Absolutely, Robin, it was a surreal period.
For somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers and to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about. And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice. You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
CNN business traveller in China. By the end of the next decade, the largest aviation market in the world. Businesses are spreading their wings. China Eastern, keeping the Chinese skies safe. New ways to earn miles. And bridging culture gaps. On the next CNN business traveller.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, it's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
Inside Africa, in association with Zenith Bank.
In 2009, Dr. Joyce Balagade Kambugu was working with the Uganda Cancer Institute. At the time, there was no pediatric oncologist in her hospital or anywhere in Uganda. Recognizing the need and driven by her love for children, Joyce enrolled in the African Pediatric Fellowship Program.
That year of training with the African Pediatric Fellowship Program in Cape Town between 2011 and 2012 changed my life completely. It was a profound experience, and I can say without hesitation that that year changed the outlook of childhood cancer in Uganda.
Apologies for the technical issues. We are now ready to start our program. We are now well into the Swiss earnings season. So how have the figures been stacking up? And Swiss jobs rise for the first time in 3 years. Good news for workers, but how are markets reacting? And it's looking like a hard week ahead at the United Nations in Geneva. On Monday afternoon, staff began a work stoppage due to expected pay cuts, while heads have been rolling amidst sexual harassment allegations. Meanwhile, the UN has already started to implement cost-cutting measures in the Swiss city. One of the ways they're doing this is by increasing the number of short-term contracts. As we'll see in tonight's big picture, that practice is not without risks for the consultants themselves.
People kept on consultancy contracts for many, many years at a time. We've also seen consultants sent to war zones and conflict zones and to peacekeeping operations, again, without any cover. A few years ago, we had 2 consultants who were killed in northern Somalia, getting off a plane. We understand their families had to pay to bring their bodies back.
And the power of positivity after coming in 5th in the men's snowboarding halfpipe at the Winter Olympics. In the Newsmaker tonight, young Swiss athlete BURGENER tells us that his attitude to life is the key to his success.
When I got there, I had the chance to see the other athletes compete before me, and I realized that, you know, the only thing you remember, the medal, okay, for sure you have a medal for your entire life. It's like money, you know, money and this medal thing, the day you die, you lose it, you know, it stays on the planet. But when the impression you leave on people's heart, you know, that's what really matters to me.
Good evening, you're watching the Swiss Pulse. I'm Martina Fuchs. Welcome to the Living Markets. We've got a packed show for you tonight. Let's get started. Let's take a look now at the top stories making news here in Switzerland and around the world. The world's largest mobile show opened its doors in Barcelona. CNN is following all the latest announcements and gadgets from inside the Mobile World Congress. Samsung is hoping to put aside all its company problems and dazzle the world with its answer to Apple's iPhone X, with the brand new Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. CNN's Samuel Berg has all the latest from the event.
Samsung is hoping to take back its spot as the top smartphone maker in the world. When Apple launched the iPhone X, they took the #1 spot. Samsung moved to #2. But now they're hoping with the enhanced cameras on the S9 and the S9 Plus that they'll be able to beat Apple. Plus, they're really separating themselves from Apple when it comes to the headphone jack. They're actually keeping a spot for that. Apple abandoned it. And with price, the new S9 will cost $720, much less than an iPhone. Any attention on a Samsung device rather than the family behind that company is welcome news for Samsung. The de facto leader of the company just got out of jail after spending less than a year there for corruption charges. This upset many anti-corruption campaigners in South Korea who thought that he might spend much closer to his full 5-year sentence there. I'm Samuel Burke. Back to you.
Good news on the job front. According to the Federal Office of Statistics on Monday, the number of jobs rose for the first time in 3 years. In the fourth quarter of 2017, the number of jobs rose by 0.8% compared to a year ago. That meant that 9,000 more vacancies were added to the economy over that period here in Switzerland. We'll have more on the Swiss job market in a short while with a guest here in the studio. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is urging her party to sign off on a deal to form a new coalition government with the center-left Social Democrats. Merkel told a party convention Monday that Germany is in a difficult situation without a new government 5 months after the election. Merkel, once the seemingly invincible leader of her party and the nation, has appeared weakened in recent months, given her struggle to put together a viable coalition for her fourth and possibly final term, while discontent over Merkel's centrist course has grown within the party. Members are expected to approve the deal by March the 4th. In Brexit news, UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn's long-awaited Brexit speech on Monday spells trouble for Prime Minister Theresa May and could lead to a rewrite of the UK's Brexit policy. Corbyn said his party supports a customs union with the EU after the UK leaves, setting the stage for a showdown with Theresa May, who ruled out any customs union, as this would prevent Britain from striking new trade deals with growing economies like China and India. And don't forget, you can watch us live on YouTube or catch up with our not-to-be-missed content online at cnnmoney.ch. We will take a short break now for your travel weather update, but stay with us for more and especially the market summary after this short break.
CNN Money Switzerland Business Weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
Now it's time for some market update, and the SMI is ending the day. Let's see here, in the green, jumping slightly over the 9,000 points and following European and Asian markets, which were largely up as well. In Asia that we see here, the new week started on a positive note. The Nikkei, the Shanghai, and also the Singapore market all finished in the green. In Europe, the picture looks very similar, all green as well. The leading European stock markets in Paris and Frankfurt and also London ended the day as well above Friday's close. And in the US markets on Monday, they started also in the positive territory. In corporate news now, Zurich Insurance Group, well, they will buy the Latin American operations of Australian insurer QBE. In a nearly $500 million purchase, the Swiss insurer, they underline its status as one of the biggest players in the region's insurance market. In fact, the transaction will position Zurich as a leading insurer in Argentina, while also adding incremental scale in Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, and Ecuador. And the market, well, pushed the stock up today, as we can see here. Zurich Insurance finished the first trading day of the week in the green, as did most financial companies here in Switzerland. Now let's take a look at Samsung and its first day of trading after it released its new flagship smartphones. The Galaxy S9 and the S9 Plus were presented yesterday, as we mentioned, in Barcelona. What's new? The 12 megapixel sensor comes with a mechanically adjustable variable aperture setup, pretty technical. And as for its rivals, such as Apple's iPhone, the price tag is not too cheap, as you can see here, between $720 and $840 for the S9 plus. And talking about the dollar, UK interest rate expectations are helping the sterling, the British pound, advance against a weak greenback, as you can see here. This comes after hawkish comments from the Bank of England's Deputy Governor on Sunday. The sterling rose broadly, but fell later to about by 0.1% to 1.3952 against the US dollar. So the current exchange rate of the sterling, as you can see here, is down slightly. Now, joining me here in the studio to discuss all that is the CIO of Merki Baumann, a private bank here in Zurich, Gero Jung. So let's talk about the earnings season that we have seen here in Switzerland recently. We're already halfway through, basically. Tomorrow we still have Swiss Life, then Kühne & Nagel, Adecco, just to name a few. What is your assessment so far?
So far, we can say that in Switzerland, the earnings season was good, but the comments and the guidance of the top managers were a bit cautious. And this clearly has to do with the currency situation. And this is a bit similar in some other European countries, and is a big contrast to the US, where we had such a great earnings seasons with 75% of companies even beating not too low expectations.
Now, as we're already nearing the earnings season here in Switzerland, let's look forward. Do you think that the large caps here in the country are on a healthy track for 2018? Does, the past year, 2017, bode well for the future?
Absolutely. The economic growth is slowly but surely improving in Switzerland as well, but in the world we know IMF has increased the forecast to 3.9%, not only for this year, for next year as well. So it's a good environment from the revenue side. But as I said before, the currency side, we see it in US dollar against Swiss franc, not as helpful as before. That's also true for some other European countries where the euro dollar is too strong. So the currency situation is important for Swiss companies going ahead.
Now, you have mentioned the US market, where we have seen so much volatility since the beginning of the year, and also the SMI has come down a little bit to an 8,900 level. How does the US market outlook continue to impact the SMI performance in your view?
I mean, it's absolutely clear. If you have more than 50% of the world market capitalization coming from the US market, whatever happens in Wall Street has a strong, very strong directional impact on not only the Swiss market, all over Europe. Now we have seen the volatility was by the market participants just anticipated to be too low, right, with the VIX index. That had to be adjusted to a reality where we see interest rates going up. Volatility has to go up as well. It will not be as calm as last year was. So the US market has increased volatility, realized volatility is on an uptrend. It's not over. We are in the consolidation period. That will have an impact both on other European markets and also on the Swiss market.
It's not just Wall Street that impacts the rest of the world, including Switzerland, but also the Fed policy. Now we have the new US Fed head, Jerome Powell. He promises, or it sounds like, the US Fed will keep a very steady policy stance. But how do you think that his policy will impact the Swiss market here at home?
I think the most important we have seen November, it's not a long time ago, the market overall was expecting just about 2 hikes for this year, 2018, then adjusted to an expectation of 3 hikes by the US Central Bank. Now with wage growth, with commodity prices on a stronger uptrend, the market has to get accustomed to, I would say, rather 3 to potentially 4 hikes. That's still healthy. It impacts the currency movements, it impacts the volatility to higher levels, and therefore we have to adjust to this reality. We will not get markets as strong in returns like last year, and particularly not as calm volatility-wise as last year.
Now, you have mentioned the Forex markets, and we have seen the Swiss franc appreciating from a 3-year low against the euro, for example. How will Swiss export companies benefit from, the most recent Forex trends?
For the Swiss exports, clearly, and that's more important for small caps than for the big large caps of the Swiss market index, what is mainly important is the euro against the Swiss franc. That is trending upwards, so the Swiss franc is less strong. That's helpful for Swiss exports and particularly for mid and small caps. Clearly for large caps, what is as important is the dollar. Here we have not exactly the same trend. With increasing volatility, the market's flows go more to safe havens like the Swiss franc or the yen, dollar going down a bit. So we have to differentiate between the large caps and the mid caps going forward for the Swiss equity market.
Before we go, Mr. Piasco, we have seen so much volatility, as we've mentioned right now. What is your piece of advice for investors? Would you, suggest they go more into safe havens like gold and treasury bonds, or do you have any other good tips for them?
You are the best advisor. I agree 100%. What is important if you get more volatility than last year is that you don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Diversify. Bonds, more emerging market bonds. Currencies, more diversified. The cheaper currencies like emerging market currencies rather than the expensive currencies like the US dollar. In the equity markets, clearly diversify also into emerging markets because valuation is cheaper. In the bond markets, take a bit of corporate hybrids, which is benefiting of economic growth. Take a bit of emerging market bonds as well, and particularly local currency emerging markets. So higher volatility, you need more diversification.
Thank you very much for your advice. That was Mr. Piasco from Merki Baumann, and we'll be with you right after a short break with the foreign exchange rates brought to you by Swissquote. See you soon.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
News programs are usually full of short stories that hardly go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture. Every weekday evening at 7 p.m, the big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests who take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The Big Picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
How do you make sure you're feeling good? We'll be focusing on all the tools available to us today to make sure we're physically and mentally healthy. From monitoring and avoiding disease to reactive and preventative healthcare. In particular, we'll be delving into the latest innovation coming out of Switzerland to ensure a long and healthy life.
Feeling Good with Amanda Kane on CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show, where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m. Entertainment, culture, fashion, arts, and lifestyle. We've got it covered on Spotlight.
Spotlight with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
I've spent all of my career in the field, and I think that informs who I want to talk to, but more importantly, who wants to and who accepts to talk to me. And I hope that What I bring to the table is a rigorous search for the truth and a rigorous determination and an effort to hold power accountable.
Amanpour.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
Welcome back to the Living Markets here on the Swiss Pulse. Well, to make sense of the latest macro figures and outlook for the Swiss economy, I'm now joined from our Geneva studio by Gero Jung. He's the chief economist at Mirabaud Asset Management. Gero, welcome to the show.
Hello to you.
Let's first of all look at the latest employment figures here in Switzerland that we have mentioned earlier. With the pickup in the fourth quarter, how well does this bode for the overall year?
Certainly, it's a good sign, the fact that the employment numbers, especially in the industrial sector, rose for the first time in 3 years is good news. When looking into the details, we can see, for instance, that growth in industrial, in manufacturing, was very strong, up 6,000. That's the first good news. Second good news was that it's relatively broad-based across regions, with all major regions basically confirming employment growth. However, we should also have in mind that this is Q4 data, so it's backward-looking data. And this is not something necessarily that is forecasting good news. However, when we look at surveys, PMI surveys that will come out later this week, at least the January numbers point to relatively solid employment growth. So the good trend is likely to continue for the time being.
Yes, as you mentioned, the industrial sector is showing healthy signs. Employment there positive again for the first time since 2015. Now, how do you explain such good figures? What are the fundamentals?
The fundamentals are strong. We've seen earlier that industrial production was rising quite strongly, actually up 14% in December alone on the quarter. On Q4, we've seen industrial output growing by about 8.5%, so relatively strong growth. And clearly Switzerland, as a small open economy, is profiting from what's going on not only in Europe but in the global economy. Global growth is relatively strong. We also see global trade, for instance, up 4.5% last year, so relatively strong numbers, and Switzerland is profiting from that trend.
Now, on the negative side, the data from the Statistics Office also shows that there are increasing challenges in recruiting skilled workers. Why do you think is that?
Yes, certainly in the industrial sector is actually lagging qualified labor, qualified employees. That is something that is not uncommon to Switzerland. We see a similar phenomenon in European countries, especially in Germany. But overall, I mean, 25% of Swiss GDP is in the industrial sector. And the fact that vacancies have arisen is just showing that we do see a cyclical upturn and the labor market is profiting from that. And overall, certainly that pushes further down the unemployment rate, which in Switzerland remains quite low at around 3%.
Exactly. We cannot really complain here in Switzerland compared to other countries like Spain or Italy. Now, Switzerland will release its GDP numbers for the fourth quarter of last year. This Thursday, real GDP grew by just 0.6% in Q3, which was boosted by manufacturing. What is your expectation for Thursday?
Yeah, this positive trend is certainly likely to continue, and we expect strong, solid Q4 numbers. No acceleration. We actually penciled in 0.6% Q-on-Q growth in the number that will be published later on this week.
Right, now looking forward, SECO has revised its forecast upwards for this year, expecting GDP will grow by 2.3% in 2018. Do you share this optimistic outlook?
Overall, we do think that Switzerland in line with the global economy, is continuing to grow. However, we are a little bit more prudent. We pencil in our models 1.9%, so slightly less than 2%, which is actually also the forecast by the SNB. 2% GDP growth. Overall, we think that there's a cyclical upturn, especially in Europe, but we do not see an acceleration from current levels in European activity, and therefore also in Switzerland. And the last word also, we also see, for instance, that global trade actually is likely to decelerate from high levels in 2017. But when we look at IMF forecasts, for instance, we do see that global trade is likely to come down a little bit to 4% growth, so less acceleration or no acceleration in trade. And Switzerland, also as a small, open economy, is certainly also going to follow that trend.
Now, here in Switzerland, domestically, which do you think are the main challenges and drivers for the Swiss economy this year? On a longer-term view, an economy really grows for two reasons. The first one is demographics, and the second one is productivity. On the second issue, on productivity, we can clearly see that Switzerland can make some progress. Productivity in capital and labor should be improved. That is one issue, longer-term issue that authorities and policymakers should tackle, probably also more intensively in the near future. In line with that, we also see, for instance, that real wage growth in Switzerland has been actually slightly above the trend in productivity growth in the last 10 years since 2007. And that in the long term is something that is unsustainable for economists. Now, before we go, Gero, let's talk about the new buzzword, E-franc. The chairman of the SIX Group said over the weekend to the Financial Times that a crypto version would give Switzerland a digital lead. Do you think this would be a good idea?
Our general view on cryptocurrencies is a prudent one. We do see advantages and disadvantages in cryptocurrencies. But overall, we are reminded by the fact that one main disadvantage is clearly the lack of authority, of regulation in cryptocurrencies. That certainly also would apply to Switzerland, and therefore we recommend to be extremely prudent with respect to such an investment.
Thank you very much. That was Gero Jung. He's the chief economist at Mirabaud Asset Management in Geneva. We're now going to a short ad break. Stay with us here on the Swiss Pulse. We'll be back with more in just a minute. Thank you for watching. Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions to global problems.
International Geneva with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the markets? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. We'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movements and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
At the end of the business day, we're only just getting started. On the living markets from 6 to 7 p.m., we crunch the numbers on the financial markets, bring you the top analysis of the day, and set the agenda for tomorrow. Always with Switzerland important global links in mind. The living markets, weeknights from 6 to 7 p.m., only on CNN Money Switzerland.
Welcome back to the living markets. Falling pregnant is sometimes easier said than done. For years, women have tried to increase the chances of conceiving by tracking cycles, measuring temperatures, and by using predictor kits. Now, by simply wearing a bracelet at night linked to an app, women everywhere can know their 5 best fertile days of the month. Pascal Koenig, the co-founder of Eva, explains.
So Pascal, you work in the femtech space, the digital health space, and specifically targeting women and women's bodies. And your company has come out with a bracelet that actually monitors the entire reproductive age in a woman. So we'll come to the other factors later, but let's start with the pregnancy part of this bracelet, which I guess is the main benefit. Now, you say that you can have 5 days in terms of a window of fertile days that you could possibly get pregnant. Now, my understanding was it was just 1 or 2. It was a very slim window. So maybe you can just explain how you double the chances of getting pregnant within the month.
Right. Well, I mean, timing to get pregnant is a key issue. And you can get pregnant on the day of ovulation and the 5 days before. So that's the science. What we see is the onset of this fertile window. We see the increase in estrogen, which happens 5-6 days before progesterone and also before LH, which other methods so far have used to identify the fertile days. And that makes this window where you can actually get pregnant longer than for competitors.
So Pascal, the other methods that you're speaking of are urine samples and measuring your temperature, of course. But how does this bracelet actually work then? I mean, what's it tracking and monitoring? And from your pulse on your wrist, how does it work?
Well, it's a bracelet that women wear during the night, only during the night, also because it's a very personal topic, of course, if you're trying to conceive. And it measures 3 million data points every night. 9 physiological parameters. It is heart rate, but it's a wealth of other physiological data. And then in the cloud with machine learning tools, we make sense of the big data sets and can tell you exactly when your fertile window comes.
And then you get an alert via the bracelet or an app or?
Well, you see all the data, the key data, the relevant data in an app. So that's really the user face to our end customers.
I'll ask you about the data and what that could mean in the bigger sense in just a moment. But in terms of these 5 days, I mean, I once read that if you get pregnant, you fall pregnant in the first fertile moment, then the chances are that's going to be a girl. And if you get pregnant later in that window, it's going to be a boy. Is there any truth in that? And if so, can you really change the population in terms of male and female with that bracelet?
Well, I mean, we have tons of data. We have now the biggest data sets in this specific area in the world. And of course, this allows us to make lots of analysis, and that would be analysis like that. So there is a lot of science around that, a lot of solid science, a lot of shaky science. I think it's not so clear when exactly, whether this correlation that you mentioned is really true or not. I think there is still a lot of discussion, but it's one of the exciting topics where we will learn a lot more in the coming years. And of course, we need to also consider ethical questions in this discussion.
And you rightly said it's a very emotional, sensitive topic for many people. What are you seeing so far in the data that you're seeing? I guess it's been a few years that you've been, collecting data. Are you seeing any trends in any particular area, one way or another?
Well, I mean, a lot of couples that are struggling to conceive see different issues, and it's important to see that the man is exactly as often the issue that it doesn't work immediately as the woman, so it's by no means a female topic only. And in terms of women, we see a lot of couples or women struggling when they have very irregular cycles. So things like PCOS could be an issue. And again, we are working on things like that. We are working on many things during pregnancy. So once you do conceive, that you can continue using the technology and the platform. Actually, already a lot of our customers do that. Also during pregnancy, about 10% of women have certain issues during pregnancy. It could be preeclampsia, it could be gestational diabetes, it could be an infection. Things where we believe that our technology can make a true difference. And we want to continue that up to menopause, where the hormonal changes really have a big effect on the female body.
And in terms of, getting pregnant, going back to that for just a moment, when you're trying to fall pregnant, there's a lot of advice, live well, sleep well, eat healthy, don't drink too much, and so on and so forth. And do you believe the bracelet you've seen in the data that if perhaps someone's not sleeping enough, that's perhaps a cause? Is there any correlation there at all?
Yes, well, there is lots of advice, and I think it can be too much advice in certain cases, and it can really kind of also be stressful if you want to do everything right, and there is so much stuff that you should do right that it can be actually very stressful. I think our product really simplifies that journey, that it gives you clear advice when can it work, when not. We can also provide you some health insights, so you have sleep insights. But at the end of the day, I think you should not completely stress you out, and it will eventually work. And we see that with our customers, that for most of them it will work out.
Now, you say that this bracelet's for your entire reproductive age. Now, that's a number of decades for many women. So why do we need to wear that if we're not aiming to fall pregnant?
Well, where we are having a very good product now is really in this journey to conceive. I think it's getting better and better also during pregnancy, and we want to grow to additional areas to really make this a product that is very relevant for women during the entire reproductive phase. I would say we are not there yet, but we have very exciting plans to really make this relevant throughout the whole journey.
And when we talk about wearables generally and tracking our health levels, our fitness, our heart rate, our sleeping patterns, do you believe that this is a real trend or merely a fad for a few years?
Well, I strongly believe that strong use cases, strong, let's say, benefits for the users are key. Nobody really wants a wearable device, right? We have plenty of devices already. So I think it's very much about the benefit that it provides you. And you could argue whether counting steps is strong enough. But if you see couples struggling, in our case, to get pregnant, and you know that if it doesn't work out within a certain period of time, you will have to go through therapies that can be very expensive and also very emotional. I think the motivation for our product can be very high. And I think it's not about the wearable device so much. It's really about the use case and the benefit, the potential benefit that it brings you.
Do you work in partnership with doctors? Is this a future item that we could have on the market to really bring down health costs, to support doctors in, clients trying to fall pregnant? Is that somewhere where you partner?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's at the very core of our company, that we do lots of clinical tests. So we have doctors internally, but mostly we work together with some of the renowned clinics in our field and with some of the key opinion leaders in the gynecology space. And I think that's the very hard to have strong clinical data, to invest a lot into science, and otherwise you will not be able to build a sustainable company.
I mean, in theory, you could bring down health costs a lot. I mean, doctor visits alone. I mean, if you say that this device can actually monitor, if you're sort of having diabetes or every week of your pregnancy, I mean, surely there's a huge impact on the economy there.
Yes, I mean, there are many areas, I think, where wearables can have a big impact, not just improve the clinical output or the clinical outcome, but also reduce cost. You mentioned diabetes, that's one of the areas, and I think there are many others. In our space, it's interesting to see that a few decades ago, contraception was really the big issue. That was the thing everybody focused on. Whereas lately, I think, it has become much more about actually conceiving. Also in terms of market size, this has increased so much in the last decade. So it's not so much about contraception anymore. I think we have methods there, but the conceiving space is really a very big one, and I think we can make a real difference there. At the same time, it's not magic. I mean, there are other issues where I think we can contribute very much in terms of timing, which is a key factor, but we are of course not going to be able to resolve all the issues in reproductive
I've
therapy.
noticed it's maybe also a question of education. We're brought up, told that it's easy to fall pregnant, and then obviously when you try, and the later and later we try in life, the harder it can be. And often we don't know that it's just such a short window, a narrow window that you can fall pregnant. So it could take years trying. So what's the impact then on the insurers? Because there's obviously many insurance firms behind couples trying to fall pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, the situation is very much nationalized, and even within nations there are big differences. Let's say in the US, depending on the employer or in the exact health plan you are in. But I think in most countries, IVF and reproductive therapies are not really included, so it's mostly a self-paid market. But this is very different depending on country and your exact situation.
Now, your firm, your company was born, this innovation was born in Switzerland, but you partner also with the States. I mean, do you see Switzerland as an innovative place for such a startup, such a wearable device?
Well, I think we have some of the ingredients that are needed in Switzerland. We have a very strong healthcare industry, both pharmaceuticals, medtech, biotech. We have a lot of knowledge in wearable devices, of course the watch industry, but not only that, also in wearable devices like hearing devices. You could argue that's one of the big successful wearable devices category at the moment. I think we have a lot of very talented data scientists. So I think we have some of the ingredients in Switzerland that are needed to make this a success. At the same time, of course, the Swiss market is irrelevant from a size perspective, and that's why we have a very strong presence in San Francisco in the US, not just because of the market, also because of the incredible know-how there around digital marketing, around community building, around business building in general. And we are now also in the process of building a presence in China, which in terms of innovation is a very exciting area.
And are the Chinese competitive in this area? Are they trying to copy your product?
Well, I think it has been very much about copying probably 10 years ago or so, but China has changed very much in the last years, and it's exciting to see how much innovation actually comes out of it. There is no product like ours for the time being. I think we have a very strong offering also for China to make a very precise and clinical-based device, but we need to be present there. It's an exciting market, and we think globally.
I just want to talk a little bit about the data that you're receiving. I mean, what happens to that data? Do you get concerns from individuals that potentially that they don't want this data released to you? It's very personal to them.
Yeah, it's a super important question, and I think a few things are very important. First of all, that you use all the state-of-the-art methods to protect the data. That is crucial, and that's changing very, very quickly, and you need to invest a lot into that to really make it secure. Second, I think it's important that the data, the personal data, belongs to our end customers. So we do get access to an anonymized data set to improve, to constantly improve our technology, but the personal data belongs to our end customer, and they can decide exactly what happens or if it's deleted. And third, it's in general very important from my perspective that we are transparent, that everybody really knows what happens with the data, who uses it for what. So I think it is a very important question.
And who are your clients right now? I mean, is it an affordable product?
Right. I think the average customer we have so far is around 30 years old. And it's someone who is thinking about having a family or has started the journey. So I think that would be the typical customer we have currently.
Pascal, who are your clients? I mean, describe to me a typical client of yours that would want this bracelet.
A typical client will be around 30 years old, and they are planning to have a family, either planning or just starting this journey.
Now, at $250, I think it's on the market at roundabout there. It's an affordable. Do people find that an affordable price when you consider that other treatments and things on the market could be more expensive?
Well, if you put it into perspective with reproductive therapies, an average therapy in the US is $35,000. Of course, it's very affordable. I think again, whether you are ready to pay $250 really depends on your use case, on the patient benefit or the customer benefit, and I think we have a very strong offering in this space. And we see that we constantly grow. It's really nice to see how we are moving forward.
And where can you actually buy such a product? Because I know, like in the pharmacies, the drugstores, you can buy the little sticks that you can give a urine sample to find out if you're fertile or not. So can you also buy a bracelet in such a store?
So for the time being, it's only online on our own website.
And can it also be used as a contraceptive? You mentioned earlier about contraception. I mean, knowing when your fertile days are, could you then reverse it to say, okay, well, I'm not fertile, so it's safe to have intercourse?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can recognize reliable which days are fertile, it is, at least in theory, possible also to do the other way and go for contraception. I think there is a very big need for non-hormonal contraception. So I do believe there is a very big potential. We are working on that also with corporations, but we are not there yet. So that's something that will be added over time.
Thank you very much, Pascal.
And that's it for the living markets. Up next is the big picture with my colleague Ana Maria Montero, and I'll see you for the Newsmaker at 8 p.m. Don't go away.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Ana Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want. Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why. I just want to press you on one further point. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It's looking like a hard week ahead at the United Nations in Geneva. On Monday afternoon, staff began a work stoppage due to expected pay cuts, while heads have been rolling amidst sexual harassment allegations. Meanwhile, the UN has already started to implement cost-cutting measures in the Swiss city, and one of the ways they're doing this is by increasing the number of short-term contracts. As we'll see in tonight's Big Picture, that practice is not without risks for the consultants themselves.
People kept on consultancy contracts for many, many years at a time. We've also seen consultants sent to war zones and conflict zones and to peacekeeping operations, again, without any cover. A few years ago, we had 2 consultants who were killed in northern Somalia, getting off a plane. We understand their families had to pay to bring their bodies back.
The power of positivity. After coming in 5th in the men's snowboarding halfpipe at the Winter Olympics, young Swiss athlete Pat BURGENER tells us in the Newsmaker Hour that his attitude towards life is the key to his success.
When I got there, I had the chance to see the other athletes compete before me, and I realized that, you know, the only thing you remember, the medal, okay, for sure you have a medal for your entire life. It's like money, you know, money and this medal thing, the day you die, you lose it, you know, it stays on the planet, but when the impression you leave on people's heart, you know, that's what really matters to me.
Good evening and welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Ana Maria Montero. Let's get started. Let's start tonight with a look at those news-making headlines here in Switzerland and around the world. The world's largest mobile show opened its doors in Barcelona. CNN is following all of the latest announcements and gadgets from inside the Mobile World Congress. Now, Samsung is hoping to put aside all its company problems and dazzle the world with its answer to Apple's iPhone 10 with the brand new Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. CNN's Samuel Burke has all the latest from the event.
Samsung is hoping to take back its spot as the top smartphone maker in the world. When Apple launched the iPhone 10, they took the #1 spot. Samsung moved to #2. But now they're hoping with the enhanced cameras on the S9 and the S9 Plus that they'll be able to beat Apple. Plus, they're really separating themselves from Apple when it comes to the headphone jack. They're actually keeping a spot for that. Apple abandoned it. And with price, the new S9 will cost $720, much less than an iPhone. Any attention on a Samsung device rather than the family behind that company is welcome news for Samsung. The de facto leader of the company just got out of jail after spending less than a year there for corruption charges. This upset many anti-corruption campaigners in South Korea who thought that he might spend much closer to his full 5-year sentence there. I'm Samuel Burke. Back to you.
Good news on the job front. According to the Federal Office of Statistics on Monday, the number of jobs rose for the first time in 3 years. In the fourth quarter of 2017, the number of jobs rose by 0.8% compared to a year ago. That meant that 9,000 more vacancies were added to the economy over that period. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is urging her party to sign off on a deal to form a new coalition government with the center-left Social Democrats. Merkel told a party convention Monday that Germany is in a difficult situation without a new government 5 months after the election. Merkel, once a seemingly invincible leader of her party and the nation, has appeared weakened in recent months, given her struggle to put together a viable coalition for her fourth and possibly final term. While discontent over Merkel's centrist course has grown within the party, members are expected to approve the deal by the 4th of March. And in Brexit news, UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn's long-awaited Brexit speech on Monday spells trouble for Prime Minister Theresa May and could lead to a rewrite of the UK's Brexit policy. Corbyn said his party supports a customs union with the EU after the UK leaves, setting the stage for a showdown with Theresa May, who ruled out any customs union, as this would prevent Britain from striking new trade deals with growing economies like China and India. And Harvey Weinstein's former film studio is reportedly heading for bankruptcy. The Weinstein Company was close to a $500 million deal with investors a few weeks ago. But the studio says the sale collapsed after investors failed to provide money to keep the company afloat while the deal was finalized. Discussions came to a halt earlier this month when the New York Attorney General's office filed a lawsuit claiming the company covered up sexual harassment complaints against Weinstein. Weinstein, who co-founded the company, was ousted from his role last year. And in today's Big Picture, we will take a look at governance issues at the United Nations, such as wage setting and sexual harassment. But after the break, we'll tell you about the growing reliance within the United Nations ecosystem on consultants, whose contracts are a far cry from the conditions assured their co-workers and other employees in Switzerland.
People kept on consultancy contracts for many, many years at a time. We've also seen consultants sent to war zones and conflict zones and to peacekeeping operations, again, without any cover. A few years ago, we had 2 consultants who were killed in northern Somalia, getting off a plane. We understand their families had to pay to bring their bodies back.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, it's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
News programs are usually full of short stories that barely go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture every weekday evening at 7 p.m. The big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests that take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The Big Picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
It's high energy and fast-paced, so buckle up as Front Seat brings you the latest news and views from the automotive world. Car developments, industry news, interviews with successful drivers, the latest trends and next-level innovation here in Switzerland and around the world. On Front Seat, we'll keep you on the right road.
Front Seat with Hannah Wise on CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show, where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
Welcome to The Big Picture. Tonight we investigate governance at the UN in Geneva. Staff on Monday began a work stoppage due to pay cuts, while heads have been rolling amidst sexual harassment allegations. But let's start with work contracts. At the heart of what is known as International Geneva, the UN's European hub employs some 9,500 people. Together, they contribute billions of francs to the local economy. Now, pressures to reform the organization have raised the question of whether or not the UN will stay in the high-cost Swiss city or relocate. Also coming to light has been their trend in recent years to rely increasingly on non-staff employees to fill short-term roles. An extreme example of this has been the situation with the unpaid interns. If you recall, in 2015, UN interns staged a protest in Geneva after a 22-year-old claimed he had to stay in a tent because he could not afford housing in the city with his unpaid position. Now, around the same time, a secret internal report revealed the extent to which the questionable hiring of consultants was taking place and the potential risks associated with these practices. Paulo do Prado Bias tells us more on what this really means for the United Nations and the consultants themselves.
For many young international professionals coming to Geneva, landing a job at the United Nations is the ultimate dream. Just like John Mark, they are passionate about what they do and playing a role towards bettering the world.
We have a toe in this game, and there is a tremendous amount of satisfaction.
After completing his international studies in Geneva, he found consultancy work at various organizations within the UN system.
And so a lot of the work that I've done over the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, has been focused on new projects that have been carved out of existing budgets or brought together with a range of different budgets to try something new and innovative.
He worked at the World Health Organization on a strategic report summarizing 10 years of work in neglected tropical diseases, and later at the Palais des Nations to develop an interactive website promoting the organization's sustainable development goals. Consultancy positions such as these have become increasingly common within the UN system. In 2014, an internal report stated that 45% of the total UN workforce are under non-staff contracts. The report by the UN's Joint Inspection Unit was critical of this trend, saying that while the consultants performed all kinds of functions, the form of hiring was inconsistent with international good labor practices and operated without real oversight and accountability. The head of the staff union at the Geneva headquarters explained some of the conditions non-staff workers continued to face 3 years after the report.
This is a huge problem because consultants don't get maternity cover, they don't get health cover, they don't get accident cover, they don't get pension, and they don't get disability cover. Also, they tend to have contracts that vary from 1 month to the next, so they don't know if they're going to get renewed or not. They also have no security if they lose their contract either. There's no unemployment or anything like that.
For those sent to war zones, this could have dire consequences.
A few years ago, we had 2 consultants who were killed in northern Somalia, getting off a plane. We understand their families had to pay to bring their bodies back.
But other issues, including lower pay, have further implications for the makeup of the organization.
To be in Geneva and to afford to stay here, to be able to come here to look for work, even as a consultant, you do have to have certain means. And you do be able to have to come to Switzerland. So you do need to be either from European country or from Switzerland itself, which makes it much harder for people to come from developing countries to see consultancies here. And that means that one of the main streams of recruitment into the United Nations, which is from the consultant pool, is inherently biased towards people from developed countries, which then affects the composition and makeup of the UN staff afterwards.
While contracts may allow for greater flexibility in hiring, the trend comes at a time of growing pressure on the organization's budget. Since coming to office, President Donald Trump has threatened to cut U.S. contributions to the UN.
As we are right now under financial strain because of the financial situation globally and have been for the past 10 years or so, that as our budgets are being cut, we're still being given the same mandates very often. And sometimes the relationship between the budgets that we get and the mandates that we get are not always as clear as one would like. But the fact is that, yes, sometimes we have to resort to short-term contracts with staff to do some of the work that we asked to be done.
The consultants tend to be younger, recently out of university. They have a lot of hope, they have a lot of ideals about what the United Nations is and how they can contribute to the UN. But after years of being on these sort of short-term contracts, being renewed from 1 month to the next, many of them leave quite embittered.
Meanwhile, some consultants still count themselves lucky to live out their dream. This is Paula Duprat-de-Bias, CNN Money, Switzerland.
But consultants are not the only ones frustrated by the UN's cost-cutting measures. On Monday, staff in Geneva began a walkout to protest higher-than-expected salary cuts. After the break, we speak to Ian Richards of the UN Staff Association for his take on employee morale.
Staff have completely lost faith in how their pay is set, in the calculations that are used, and we think we need to find another way now.
CNN Money Switzerland business weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
Well, the week ahead is expected to be a busy one at the United Nations in Geneva, as dignitaries arrive for high-level talks at the Human Rights Council and disarmament bodies. But talks at the Rights Council were affected as staff throughout the Geneva office walked out in protest of what they call unfair pay cuts. Cutting costs have long been a concern for the thousands of people employed at the global organization and for the city itself, which benefits from the billions in revenues earned from UN activities. Recently, Michael Muller, the Director General of the United Nations Geneva office, told us that they have considered relocating some jobs to other cities.
In other parts of the world, plenty of other cities Some of them want to have more than they have now, and some of them offer incentives, and in some cases we are now looking at moving some of the back office functions that are cheaper to be done elsewhere.
As we looked at earlier on tonight's Big Picture, cost cutting has also led to a growing number of short-term hires at the organization. In addition to this, UN staff recently learned that their salaries will be cut by 5.1%, more than was expected following last year's negotiations. Now, the organization's staff association wrote to Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying it had, quote, lost confidence in the independence and technical competency of the Commission responsible for salary decisions and asked to defer the implementation of the pay cuts. But concerns over salary cuts have been prevalent throughout the UN's Geneva office in the past months. Paula Duprado-Bias spoke to Ian Richards of the Staff Association about how employees were reacting to the news.
First of all, it's a big cut in pay. But secondly, staff have completely lost faith in how their pay is set, in the calculations that are used, and we think we need to find another way now. So currently our pay is set by this obscure body called the International Civil Service Commission. It's based in New York. It's 13 men and 2 women. And they use a variety of calculations, using cost of living calculations, to determine how salaries should be in different duty stations of the United Nations. However, we've looked at their data. We found a number of flaws in their calculations. They used incorrect prices. They made incorrect comparisons between Geneva and New York. We pointed this out to them. They still want to accept that. We feel that we've asked the Secretary General to look at how pay could be done in a more fair way and how staff can negotiate their own pay, like elsewhere.
So what does the 5% represent an overall cut in the budget of 5%, or is this just for staff?
It's just for staff. So the budget itself is not being cut by 5%. And indeed, this isn't related to budget cuts. In other parts of the world, there's actually been small increases as well. But we're seeing a number of cuts which we think are being forced by donors, and that's putting pressure to cut the salaries. Now, the salaries are supposed to be set by a so-called methodology, a technical body, but we feel there's a lot of pressure from certain countries to reduce salaries.
Any particular countries?
There's a few, they're usually the same.
Are these cuts actually then across the board the same for all stations?
No. So in Geneva, they're cutting 5%. In Bangkok, they're cutting local staff by 10%, and that follows a 25% cut 6 years ago. In Tokyo, they're cutting local staff by 25% as well. And there's other cuts in New Delhi and Cairo. So it isn't just about Geneva.
And then in terms of firings, are there firings that have been announced?
No, there haven't been any firings announced. We are in a situation where they're trying to move certain functions to back offices, certain administrative functions. There's a lot of confusion about that. We're trying to make sure that staff are protected. But there's still a lot of confusion about the number of posts that they're requesting to move to the back offices. It seems that the back offices will require more staff overall than are used for the current administrative functions in the duty stations like Geneva and New York, which kind of defeats the purpose of back office offshoring.
So do we have any idea of where people may be transferred from Geneva to these back offices?
It's being kept as a very tightly guarded secret. We think there are places like Budapest or Kuala Lumpur. Those are the usual ones for the UN, but we're waiting to see.
Do you know at all when this might be announced?
So they say they'll announce it to the General Assembly in May, and then the members of the General Assembly will have to make the final decision.
You were talking about transparency and the lack of transparency. I mean, can you say exactly how things proceeded since last year's meeting?
The salary cut in Geneva started with a cost of living survey that was done by Geneva staff in late 2016. The calculations were then done, and at that point it was announced in March last year that there would be a cut of 7.7%. We questioned that data because we didn't think that costs in Geneva had gone down by that much. We sent some top statisticians to look at the calculations in New York. They came back with a very long report, a 70-page report, which showed there'd been errors in the calculation. They used the wrong statistical methods, and they'd also used the wrong prices for certain things. And overall, that had conspired to reduce the salaries when it shouldn't have. So we had a number of demonstrations. There was a work stoppage. This commission, which sets our salaries, then committed to reduce the cut. They said somewhere between 2% and 3% once certain factors, external factors, were taken into account. Now we suddenly find out last week that it's going to be in the region of 5%, and we still don't know the exact figure. That's how terrible the system is. So we're waiting to see, but obviously staff are furious.
Meanwhile, Alessandra Vellucci, the UN Geneva spokesperson, rejects that salary cuts at the organization were greater than expected. She also says the organization needs to strive toward greater efficiency.
The initial announcement spoke about 7.7%, and so I would say that is the contrary is in fact lower than we had expected in the very first place.
But was there not an agreement that that cut would only be 3%?
No. To the best of my knowledge, and according to the information we have received and we have also communicated to the staff, the issue was not that the diminution would be limited to 3.5. The issue was that the total amount of the cuts would be, in fact, introduced into parts, into moments. So one was 3.5, and the other one, as I said, we're expecting to see what's going to happen. It's going to be in summer, and we expect the total amount to be about 5%.
Another point that I just wanted to ask you is regarding the outsourcing of certain work and the move of that work to back offices. When we spoke to Mr. Mueller recently, he said that there was some thought about moving some of the staff. Is there any further details on that?
I suppose that you are speaking about what we call here at the United Nations the Global Service Delivery Model, which is indeed an innovation which is introduced by the management to pool our resources, especially administrative resources, in order to be more efficient and more cost-effective. This is a process which is still being defined, being concretized. So I am not able today to give you comments on what it is going to be exactly. But what I can say is that very recently there was a big meeting in New York on this, and that negotiations are happening, and discussions, I would say more than negotiations, are happening on how this model should be implemented. But the most important thing in this regard is that the idea is not to cut posts. That's not the point. The point is to be more efficient in terms of delivering administrative services which are common to many parts of the UN, if not all. And by pooling resources, the idea is to be more efficient, more nimble, more cost-effective, and at the end of the day, more productive.
We continue with our big picture look at the United Nations, turning our sights now to the mounting allegations of sexual harassment that have come to the forefront within the European hub and associated organizations. We speak to experts about what they say needs to change in order to better protect victims of abuse.
When there's a report of sexual harassment, it goes to the UN's own internal investigation unit. And if someone is fired or not fired, if an appeal grows out of that, it goes to the UN's own internal justice system. So it's a very closed system. There's no oversight, there's no external oversight, and that's a big problem, and that's what really needs to change.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS.
Only from CNN Money, Switzerland.
What drives Swiss leaders? What is the secret to their success? In the Newsmaker, we speak to successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, politicians, decision makers, opinion leaders, sports and entertainment personalities. We find out what makes them tick in a special long-form interview that gets to the heart of who they are and where they are going. So pull up a chair and join us for the Newsmaker every weekday evening from 8 p.m. on CNN Money Switzerland.
somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about.
France will never give up against the terrorists.
And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice.
Thank you.
You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the markets? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. Well, we'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland. Welcome back to The Big Picture, where tonight we investigate governance at the UN. After consultant contracts and salary cuts, we now take a look at another controversy to hit the international organization and associated groups. After the Harvey Weinstein scandal in the U.S. put in motion a global Me Too movement, allegations of sexual harassment are taking the international aid groups by storm, and heads are rolling. Last week, the deputy director of British aid group Oxfam resigned amidst claims of sexual abuse by staff during the 2010 Haiti earthquake. At the UN, UNICEF's deputy chief resigned following allegations of inappropriate behavior. And on Friday, the director of UN AIDS in Geneva said he would not seek renewal of his position following criticism for mishandling sexual harassment allegations. By the end of the week, the UN issued a statement on sexual exploitation and abuse. It said in 2017 that 40 allegations were made on behalf of all UN entities and, quote, implementing partners. Now, the spokesman for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres wrote that, quote, every allegation involving our personnel undermines our values and principles. Combating this scourge and helping and empowering those who have been scarred by these egregious acts continue to be key priorities. Paula Duprado-Bias spoke with two experts on the sexual harassment scandal hitting international organizations and NGOs, as well as the employment of consultants in the field. The first is Andrew MacLeod. He's a former aid worker who previously served at the UN Emergency Coordination Center, at the UNHCR, and with the International Committee of the Red Cross. And the second is Edward Flaherty, an attorney in Geneva who worked with international civil servants.
The UN enjoys immunity from national laws. I mean, the only reason things have changed in the US and the UK, Australia, is because the laws changed and changed the burdens of proof, changed the standards. The UN hasn't had that. They are their own judge. When there's a report of sexual harassment, it goes to the UN's own internal investigation unit. And if someone is fired or not fired, if an appeal grows out of that, it goes to the UN's own internal justice system. So it's a very closed system. There's no oversight, there's no external oversight, and that's a big problem. And that's what really needs to change to stop this epidemic.
You've spoken about sexual harassment in the field and during international missions. What is your feeling about how aid workers interact both amongst themselves with female aid workers, as well as with the locals?
I think in aid there is a sense of impunity and a sense of the law doesn't apply to me, and a sense of I'm here doing good. Almost a neo-colonialist approach, especially to national staff and local people in general. At the extreme end, like the Haiti case with Oxfam, you could almost say that some of the expatriate aid workers treated the local staff as disposable human beings. The majority of aid workers are good, but at the extreme end, this notion of a complete lack of respect for someone else's humanity permeates at the worst end. You can understand it in circumstances of conflict where stresses build up on people, where you are facing day-to-day challenges to your own life, you're away from your family and friends, that some people's decision-making gets very poor. And in my experience, people tended to adjust in one of two ways. They either sought out the physical comfort in others, sometimes consensual and sometimes not, or they constricted into a hole of introversion, which is what I did when I was a field worker in the aid industry. So it's a combination of factors that basically mean the rules that apply back home don't apply when you're in the field.
So there have been a number of internal investigations and task forces looking into sexual harassment committed against female aid workers, as well as with locals that these aid workers are interacting with. But it seems that these have been to no avail, as far as one can see. Is there any hope now with the Oxfam case that things may change?
I think a lot of the focus in the past, particularly from members of your profession, if I may say, have been victim-centric stories, which has meant that the general population has been able to say, oh, that happens over there. What's different now with Oxfam is people have realised the perpetrators are white, male, middle-aged, and doing it on your taxpayer dime. And people are getting angry at this because what Oxfam has done is they've betrayed the hope of the donors. They've betrayed the goodwill of the donors. And it's just as much a betrayal of those giving the money as it is to the poor victims in Haiti themselves. So perhaps now we'll get change, because what we've done is we've cracked the facade of goodness in the aid industry, which is now starting to make us ask, how do we fix it? Not just the sexual abuse, but actually prove to me that we're bringing people out of poverty. Because the hope that has been betrayed is we actually donate money because we hope we're lifting people out of poverty. It's time for hope to end and facts to start.
In terms of the workers that are on the field, are there certain conditions that they're supposed to respect when it comes to the contracts that they're signing for their jobs? Are there any stipulations in terms of how they need to behave and sanctions eventually that would fall upon them for misbehavior?
You know, the really sad thing is that we have to start to look at contractual terms. Surely a human being knows you don't rape children. Surely a human being knows you don't manipulate your staff. Surely a human being knows that you don't go to somewhere like Haiti and know that I'm in a position of power as a white, rich man, and therefore I can treat people here as a disposable human being. If we have to descend back to contractual terms, let's just fold the whole industry up. But there are. And more importantly, there is a duty of care upon the boards and the CEOs to not only just have the right contractual terms in place, but enforce these. There is a danger here that if we look at the individual perpetrator, we will miss the great failing has been a failure of oversight and a failure of governance. And if you take child sex, for example, many countries have extraterritorial child sex laws, but they make it unlawful not only to have sex with a child, but aid, abet and support. And I argue that turning a willful blind eye or failing to prevent has got so endemic that it now has reached the level of aiding and abetting. And I'm looking forward to a CEO or a trustee going to jail.
We're speaking earlier about the situation of consultants that are hired by the UN and its agencies. And what are the sort of situations that you've seen on the field or in the field for these individuals?
My first contract with the United Nations was as a consultant, and you don't get the rights of child's education or guaranteed employment. You don't get the tax benefits of being in the UN. But even more importantly, the average consultant's contract term is shorter than the average recruitment time for the next contract. So what you actually find is a consultant is not only worried about his or her current job, but looking for the next one and the one after, because if they haven't identified the job after, before the next one, then they're going to be spending a period of lengthy unemployment, which just adds to the sense of real employment uncertainty. So in that context, when a contractor sees something wrong going on and they want to blow the whistle, they know that by blowing the whistle, that's it. There's no new contract, no new job. They've been a troublemaker. And this is what adds to the sense of impunity within the aid world. The uncertainty of employment contracts makes it very, very difficult. Now, that's hard for someone like me with a Western passport. And if I were someone with a non-Western passport, it's even harder. Based here in Geneva, for example, as an Australian, if I lost my job, I can stay here for 3 months on a tourist visa, look for another job. But if I'm from Botswana, the UN has to tell the Ministry of Foreign Affairs straight away, I lose my right to be here, my children lose their right to be in the international school, and I've got to go within a week. Now, how does that encourage in any way people holding their own organisation to account?
But in the field, what sort of situations have you seen there?
In the field, it's even worse because the types of health insurance, emergency evacuation insurance don't apply in the same degree if you're a consultant. You're a second-grade citizen across a whole bunch of rights and obligations.
So how do you see this situation developing? Is it part of the issue of reforms taking place and budgetary cuts? Is that part of the issue here?
I think it is. I mean, the UN has long abused precarious workers, even though the ILO has a standard dealing with so-called precarious workers. In Geneva, they're known as long-term, short-term staff, or they're consultants. And as the budgets get cut, the work doesn't go down. The member states want the projects delivered, so the UN hires consultants, hires short-term staff, and many of them don't have the same protections as regular staff. So people are more vulnerable, less willing to report abuse or harassment. And they become very dependent upon their jobs. And one of the realities of working for an international organization, whether it's the UN or some other international organization in Geneva or Vienna or New York, is that it's very difficult to replace that salary or to get another job. If you're let go, if you're blacklisted, it's almost impossible to get a job in another international organization. That's a big, big problem.
Meanwhile, you are a board member of Cornerstone Capital, and where you look at the business risk involved for investors who are looking at putting their money into certain charities. Can you explain to me exactly the return on investment for these people?
Cornerstone Capital is a New York-based bank that looks at environmental, social and governance issues when advising our clients in where to place their money. The return on investment you're looking for is both in reputation terms but in concrete profitability terms. Like for some companies, you actually want to partner up with a charity that actually can lift people out of poverty because that can improve the quality of your local workforce. For example, Rio Tinto spends more money in Mongolia on health and education than the government of Mongolia does because we recognise that the second-generation workforce will be better and more productive and therefore reduce your fly-in, fly-out expatriate staff, lower your cost, improve the NPV of your asset, and that flows right through into share price. BHP Billiton, for example, before they divested the Mozambique assets, they ran an anti-malaria program that reduced adult malaria infection from 92% of the population to 5.6%. The improved community health dropped absenteeism in the workforce from 22% to 2%. That improved the productivity of the asset by an amount higher than the cost of the program. So you're looking for those sort of partnerships that can be demonstrably successful either on the balance sheet or on the profit and loss report. But then here comes the real problem. If you are a company that is partnering up with a charity that now turns out to be the home of sexual abuse or worse, child rape? What is your reputation risk? And there is an inconsistency between the way we treat the private sector and the public sector in this. If a private sector company had a subcontractor that did something wrong, we would expect the company to be held to account. When the oil spill happened in the Gulf, BP was held to account, even though it was a subcontractor that broke the drill. How is it that we allow the UN to subcontract to Oxfam, but we don't hold the UN to account to the same standards that we hold the private sector? Some people say I'm too focused on effectiveness, efficiency and money in this case. But the private sector, if you do something wrong, you lose money. In the charity sector, if you do something wrong, it costs people's lives. So for this reason, we should hold the charity sector to a much higher standard than we hold the private sector.
How hopeful are you that this last case now at Oxfam, the child abuse by the aid workers, is going to sort of change things within the UN system, or the system of international organizations and charities?
I hope that the current circumstances cracks the facade of goodness around the aid industry. For too long, the aid industry has been able to say, we are just trying to do good. Now it's time to prove that you're doing net good. That is, your good is outbalancing your bad. I've said on a number of occasions, this is not the chance to cut aid, this is the chance to fix aid. But in fixing aid, I don't mean just fixing the sexual exploitation and abuse of adults and children. I'm also meaning show that we're actually bringing people out of poverty. For too long, we have measured the aid industry on process but not outcome. We've spent X million dollars, but what have we actually done to lift people out of poverty? One step forward would be this. If you accept a meaningful indicator in breaking the cycle of poverty, after you've given someone health, education, water, is have they got a job? In a sense, well-regulated and well-remunerated employment is the indicator about whether aid has been successful. And maybe we need to change the focus of aid, of instead of just giving the handout, we need to create the investable climate where the private sector then comes in, puts more investment into an economy and creates jobs and pulls people out of poverty, just like has happened in Rwanda.
I was happy to see that the Secretary General tweeted last week that the UN was not going to apply the immunity in child rape cases. I think that's a very important step. I think that it also should be applied to the consultants, because now, today, if a consultant is harassed, they effectively have no recourse. Generally, the UN is immune from the national laws wherever the harassment took place. And consultants also don't have access to the UN's so-called internal justice system. So I'm not very hopeful until and unless the immunity situation has changed, sadly.
We asked the spokesperson at the UN office in Geneva, Alessandra Vellucci, about the timing of the Secretary General's statement last week, referring to the number of allegations of sexual harassment within the United Nations system. The statement had said that 40 allegations of sexual harassment had been reported over the last 3 months of 2017.
The Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has committed himself, among other things, in having sound data on these situations and to do this regularly. So now we have just published the figures related to the last 3 months of 2017.
What is the relationship that the UN has with the various NGOs in the field?
I can't speak precisely of one agency working with another NGO in particular. However, what I can say is that the United Nations zero tolerance policy for cases of sexual exploitation and abuse extends to our partners, to the people that help us implement our action in the field. These partners are obviously very important to the United Nations. They are instrumental for us in achieving our goals, especially in the field. But we, of course, want to see the same zero-tolerance policy implemented throughout the system and its actions.
How do these allegations of sexual harassment affect the UN, and are there concerns regarding funding?
The first worry, the most important thing, and the reason for which we are so involved in fighting this scourge is, of course, the suffering of the victims. That's the number one reason. But it's also a question of the fact that these actions go completely against the principles and the values for which the UN stands. It is absolutely contrary to our mandate, to our principles, to our value, to our really for everything that the UN stands for. So on one side we have the terrible suffering of the victims, and on the other side we have an organization that has to live to its own standards, and the standards of the UN has to be the highest and are the highest.
The statement that was issued by the Office of the Secretary General says that there were 40 allegations of sexual harassment that were received. Were any of these cases in Geneva?
I can't talk about the place where this happened. The allegations in questions are referring, as you said rightly, there are 40 of them. 15 of them came from peacekeeping operations and 25 from agencies and programs of the United Nations. Out of these 25, 8 concerned implementing partners of various kinds. The allegations we are speaking about are those that refers to the last 3 months of the year 2017. For what concerns Geneva, and I can speak for the Secretariat, so for what concerns the Secretariat of the UN in Geneva, what we call the UN office at Geneva, in the last 5 years, 2 cases of what we call sexual harassment, that means inappropriate behavior inside the office by a UN staff were reported. So 2 of them in Geneva, and one in 2013 and one in 2015, and they were both thoroughly investigated. One of these cases was found to be circumstantiated and brought to the deferral of the case for disciplinary sanctions. And another one was found to be uncircumstantiated and therefore was closed by the investigators.
So do any of these cases include UNICEF, UNAIDS, and the World Food Programme?
I can tell you that 2 cases concerned UNICEF and 1 case the World Food Programme.
Okay, but 40 seems to be an awfully low number when you consider that 185,000 people are working around the world for the UN and its various agencies. Does this show that that the victims may be afraid to speak out, and that perhaps the perpetrators are being protected?
The fact that you are speaking about 40 cases is related to the time. We are speaking about the last 3 months of the year 2017, which of course doesn't mean that before or after there have been other cases, especially before. But I would not speak about protection, not at all. This is what Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been doing in the last year, not only reinforcing the measures for actually investigating in these cases, but also creating a climate where both the victims and eventual whistleblowers are protected from retaliation, because our scope is really to make everybody feel safe if they are victims of a case or if they are witness to a case. Secretary General was very clear. It's our duty to speak and to speak up, and not only for ourselves, but also for colleagues. And it's the duty of the managers to ensure that the work environment is harmonious. So they have a duty to, 1, listen, to investigate, 3, report or take measures as appropriate. And the whole UN system, every staff is informed now of the measures that can be taken, the procedures that have to be followed, and very soon we will also have, very soon, we will also have a hotline for people to speak and report cases for themselves or for the others.
So the process that you're going to be promoting is still going to be an internal process. There's been a little bit of concern precisely that internally these issues can't be fully resolved.
Well, they have to be fully resolved in terms of working relations. If somebody is guilty of an inappropriate behavior or even worse sometimes, this has to be investigated and eventually taken up within the working environment. But some cases are really the competence of criminal, some cases configure criminal acts, and in this case, this has to be deferred and is deferred to national authorities. This is not only true in the working environment, it's also true for peacekeeping missions. And as you know, in the case of peacekeepers, we refer the case to the authorities of the country to which the person belongs. And it's up to those countries to take measures.
Okay, wrapping up tonight's big picture on the UN governance. I am now joined by my colleague, Martina Fuchs. We are switching gears now, looking ahead to our Newsmaker Hour, which you will be taking over very shortly. And we're speaking to one of our Olympic athletes, our Swiss.
Pat BURGENER, he's a snowboarder, and he came in 5th in the men's snowboarding half pipe at the Winter Olympics. Sadly, they are over. As you know, yesterday was the spectacular closing ceremony. Have you been watching and following the Winter Olympics, Anna Maria?
I must confess, I have not been watching anything live because it was a little too early. 3 in the morning is not when I get up and watch TV. So that was a bit of a downside.
But the Swiss Olympics team, 15 medals.
That's right.
That's exactly the same amount that they made at the Winter Olympics in Calgary, isn't it?
Yes, we have tied our record. That in itself is very exciting.
For the small team that they are and the small country as well, it's quite a remarkable number, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. And as you know, we've been following it with Matt Layton. We've been ringing that bell quite a bit.
It's really famous right now.
I'm going to miss the cowbell. We have to come up.
You must have sore muscles now. It's quite heavy.
It is quite heavy. Now we got to come up with another reason to use it.
Absolutely.
So if you have any suggestions, I'm open.
The next Winter Olympics is only in 2022 in Beijing. So
yeah, well, I don't know what I'll be doing in 2022.
In China, they must be really preparing already, and I know that preparations are in full swing. They are already, preparing the pipes and the slopes and the indoors and outdoors facilities. I think they have like 700 that are being prepared for the next Winter Olympics. So, but I'm sure that you're also a big fan of snow sports anyways, Anna Maria, right? What do you practice?
I am into skiing and a little snowboarding. I learned how to snowboard. Nothing like our newsmaker coming up, Pat BURGENER, who was apparently was at 9. He already knew that school wasn't for him and that he was a singular talent. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. And he has a new album out. He's a musician as well.
He's not just a snowboard star, but also a musician. So stay tuned for the Newsmaker coming up shortly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Martina. And for all of you that have stayed with us tonight during the big picture, thank you. It's always wonderful to have you. I'm Ana Maria Montero. I leave you in good hands, and good night.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Yeah. Oh,
Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
The NEWSMAKER is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
And seeing Shanghai the old-fashioned way. CNN Business Traveler in China. By the end of the next decade, the largest aviation market in the world. Are you ready for that? Businesses are spreading their wings. China Eastern, keeping the Chinese skies safe. New ways to earn miles. Are you still a mileage geek? Yes, always. And bridging culture gaps. Don't ask. On the next CNN Business Traveler.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
The power of positivity after coming in 5th in the men's snowboarding halfpipe at the Winter Olympics. Young Swiss athlete Pat BURGENER tells us that his attitude to life is the key to his success.
When I got there, I had the chance to see the other athletes compete before me, and I realized that, you know, the only thing you remember, the medal, okay, for sure you have a medal for your entire life. It's like money, you know, money and this medal thing, the day you die, you lose it, you know, it stays on the planet, but when the impression you leave on people's heart, you know, that's what really matters to me.
The markets have had plenty to feast on so far in 2018. A robust and changing economy, earnings reports and a rise in jobs for the first time in 3 years. So how will these somewhat unpredictable markets react? Good evening, I'm Martina Fuchs and you are watching The NEWSMAKER. Let's take a look now at the top stories making news here in Switzerland and around the world. The world's largest mobile show opened its doors in Barcelona. Samsung is hoping to put aside all its company problems and dazzle the world with its answer to Apple's iPhone X with the brand new Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. Good news on the job front. According to the Federal Office of Statistics on Monday, the number of jobs rose for the first time in 3 years in Switzerland. In the fourth quarter of 2017, the number of jobs rose by 0.8% compared to a year ago. That means that 9,000 more vacancies were added to the economy over that period. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is urging her party to sign off on a deal to form a new coalition government with the centre-left Social Democrats. Merkel told a party convention Monday that Germany is in a difficult situation without a new government 5 months after the election. Merkel, once the seemingly invincible leader of her party and the nation, has appeared weakened in recent months given her struggle to put together a viable coalition for her fourth and possibly final term. While discontent over Merkel's centrist course has grown within the party, members are expected to approve the deal by March the 4th. In Brexit news, UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn's long-awaited Brexit speech on Monday spells trouble for Prime Minister Theresa May and could lead to a rewrite of the UK's Brexit policy. Corbyn said his party supports a customs union with the EU after the UK leaves, setting the stage for a showdown with Theresa May, who ruled out any customs union, as this would prevent Britain from striking new trade deals with growing economies like China and India. New U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell will make his public debut on Tuesday when he testifies before the House Financial Services Committee on Thursday. He will also appear before the U.S. Senate Banking Committee. Mr. Powell has said that he plans to continue the Fed's gradual retreat from the economic stimulus campaign, slowly raising interest rates. While the U.S. economy is gaining strength, Mr. Powell is likely to emphasize that, so far, stronger growth is increasing the Fed's confidence in its plans rather than giving it a reason to move more quickly. And after the break, we're talking with Pat BURGENER, a young Swiss athlete straight off the slopes in PyeongChang, who tells us that a difficult childhood has led him to a life where he can follow not just one, but two of his dreams. Stay tuned. We'll have that for you shortly.
That was my strong point, is to stay calm, not take drugs, not drink, but just learn from what life had to give me. And I did this wonderful. You know, I just started playing music, and I woke up every morning super early. You know, whilst the other guys were snowboarding, I would wake up to play music, and that's what life gave me. You know, it gave me the opportunity to know about music, and that's why today I'm really happy to have both, and it just made me who I am today.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have. It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour.
Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
I've spent all of my career in the field, and I think that informs who I want to talk to, but more importantly, who wants to and who accepts to talk to me. And I hope that what I bring to the table is a rigorous search for the truth and a rigorous determination and an effort to hold power accountable.
Amanpour.
The Swiss Pulse delivers you the most important global and Swiss business and financial news, connecting Switzerland to the world. Tune in every weekday from 6 p.m. or find us on the go on our website or social media.
At just 9 years of age, Pat BURGENER decided that school wasn't for him. But his lack of enthusiasm for formal education hasn't held him back. Tonight in our NEWSMAKER interview, he tells us that his positive mental attitude and openness to life has put him on a path most people can only dream of. Fresh from success at the Winter Olympics in South Korea, the 23-year-old is back in Switzerland and ready for the release of his first music album next month. Hannah Weiss met BURGENER in his music studio and began by asking him how he felt about his 5th place final in the men's snowboarding halfpipe.
It was the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life, really.
Why?
From the day we got to this day, you know, you get the official clothing and everything. I knew I was right into it. You know, I've been waiting for 4 months, 5 months, just every time you train, pretty much you just fall back in the future, which is really hard to keep training because you know, the only real way to perform in sports is just living the moment, you know, and being there. And it was really hard to keep that in mind. I was always falling back into this Olympic thing that I was really so excited about, you know. And you see other people getting injured at the same time because it's a really tough time, you know. You have to do everything you can and at the same time take risks but still stay fit, you know. So I made that true, and then when I got there I was so grateful just to be there and not hurt, you know, because the last 2 Olympics I missed them because of injuries. So I was just so much living the moments, you know, living the present when I was in Korea.
Did you have expectations on yourself for when you got there for results?
For sure, you know, my goal is always to get a medal. It's always a goal, but I know the other guys have been working really hard. Scotty, Ayumu and Shauna, I knew it was going to be hard to beat them. And actually, you know, at some point I was just, okay, my goal is to, you know, do the best run I've ever done in my life and just show the world that I'm happy, you know. And when I got there, I had the chance to see the other athletes compete before me, and I realized that, you know, the only thing you remember, the medal, okay, for sure you have a medal for your entire life. It's like money, you know, money and this medal thing, the day you die, you lose it, you know, it stays on the planet. But when the impression you leave on people's heart, you know, that's what really matters to me. And I got the chance to realize that right before my event, and when I rode, that was like so much into a, you know, a happy vibe. And I got 1,000 messages on Instagram and Facebook, and nobody told me, oh, too bad you missed the medal, you know. And that's usually what you get when you get 5th. You're like, oh, you were so close. And none of them was about this. They were all like, you're such an inspiring person. I didn't even talk to the TV, you know. I was just, the way I rode, the way I started, before even dropping in, I was listening to my music, enjoying this vibe. And I think I kind of showed the world what this sport is about, you know. And I said, everybody deserves his medal, and I'm just glad to be part of this, you know. That's.
And what was it like being part of the Swiss team in PyeongChang?
You know, it's a really strong team. Switzerland is a big country. Everyone waits a lot from us, you know, from the winter sports. And my homie Yuri did the goal at the last Olympics. So he was injured this time, and I was hoping to get a medal too. And it's a lot of pressure, you know. Like I said, it's a big, you know, sports. Winter sport in Switzerland is a big thing. So I was really happy to be part of this big family, you know.
And finally, you were part of the big family because it's taken you many years to get to this stage, and you've had a lot of injury along the way. Just tell us about some of that. Yeah,
you know, injuries is not a pleasant thing in sports, and I think I really could do the best out of injuries. You know, I always stayed positive and stayed, you know, open minds of what life gives you. You know, because you can always control life. Just life comes, gives you some up and downs, and I think it's the way because when you're up there, everything seems perfect, you know. You don't really ask yourself many questions about life. But when you're down there and you feel bad, you know, you feel disappointed about so many things. And it's actually in this kind of moments, either you start taking drugs and drinking a lot of alcohol, and then you miss on the opportunity to learn. And that was my strong point, is to stay calm, not take drugs, not drink, but just learn from what life had to give me. And I did this wonderful. I just started playing music, and I woke up every morning super early. Whilst the other guys were snowboarding, I would wake up to play music, and that's what life gave me. It gave me the opportunity to know about music, and that's why today I'm really happy to have both, and it just made me who I am today.
Do you think they kind of feed into each other? So music inspires your snowboarding, and also snowboarding kind of inspires your music. Do you think that they have
Sure, yeah. I mean, snowboarding, I was always, I never wanted to go to school when I was a kid. I always wanted to do something different, and music is for sure something different, It's something different from what people expect from you. And I'm so grateful to have these two lives. And when I started playing music 4 years ago, after my injury from the Olympics, everyone's like, you have no chance. Like, it's just a way of, like, well, Pat's playing music, whatever. He's not going to get anywhere. And then today, when I release, I just signed with Universal. I have my album coming out. I have, like, so many good things happening. And especially the way I'm on stage now, I teach people, my listeners who come see me on stage, I have something to give them, some of my life experience, and that's the first goal for me. When I started playing music, it was inspiring people, and it's always been my goal in life. I had so much trouble to get this life I live today. I had to fight really hard, in Switzerland, to not go to school and do sports or music. It's not easy, and I fought, and now today my goal is just to share this passion, this beautiful life with other people. So I do it with the music, I do it with vlogs on YouTube. Now we have so many ways of showing this life, and yeah.
Tell me about your childhood then.
Oh, my childhood, it was tough. I was 9, 8, and I didn't want to go to school. Like, to me, if you don't enjoy what you do in life, why would I even be alive, It's like, you don't want to live in prison. I mean, I've never been to prison, but I think it's not a pleasant place to be. And why would you live a life you don't enjoy living? So I just kept saying that. I'm like, I didn't go to school. I just walked out of school, and people, my friends told me, dude, you're crazy. You're going to get fired. You're going to get this. I'm like, whatever happens. They could even kill me today. I don't mind. I would rather die than live this life. And I fought really hard, to get this. And
so what age did you actually leave school?
Well, age, I think around 10 was pretty much the time I didn't really go to school, really. I still went till I was 18, but just to work my brain a little bit. But till I was 15, I was kind of gone, but not really. And then at the age of 16, I really didn't go much anymore. Then I realized my mother, she put me in a private school. She wanted me to go and have some math lesson and stuff without even wanting to do the diploma, just to work your head, because it's healthy, And then I realized when I stopped and I got all my injuries, I had 2 years, and I was like, I need to do something else, And that's when the music popped up, and I was like, this is probably the new thing,
You were diagnosed with hyperactivity as a child, though, and is that what kind of led you into sport?
Well, I guess so, yeah, because I need to move all the time. I need to be outside playing football, playing whatever, And I think I just... More than just that, it's just, the fact of doing something different,
So how did you find snowboarding specifically?
Well, because it was the most rock and roll thing I could find back then, And I did all the sports. I did tennis. I wanted to be Federer one day. I wanted to be football player. I wanted to be basketball. And I always did it for 2 or 3 months, but then quit because I invested all my time in it. But then at some point I was like, it's not the thing. And I was doing skateboarding at the time a lot. Then I went up to Crans, Montana, where we have a holiday house, and I started snowboarding with a snowboard teacher. He taught me a backside 360 on the slopes, and then since I did that, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do.
I have a big question, actually. This is really just for me, but what is a switch backside triple cork 1440?
Oh, it's just the name of a trick.
But what is it? Just describe it to us.
So it's 4 spins on yourself.
So 4 full spins.
4 full spins rotations.
In the air.
Yeah, and then 3 backflips at the same time in one jump.
Okay.
And that was like one of the biggest steps of my life. When I did this switch, I was the first guy on the planet to do it, and I was only 16. And back then I didn't realize how crazy that was. You know, I was just...
Was that a goal for you then, to kind of achieve that?
Yeah, you know, when you're in that mood, it's like, now the Olympics, you know, it's like, for sure it's a goal, but before everything, it's like a passion you're just living, you know, and you're not even thinking that much, you're just doing it because it's just like, it's in there, it's in your heart, you know, you just do it, and then it happens. And that's why before I was like 20, like a few years back, when I saw kids jumping and they were 15 and people said, oh, they're good, they do a 720, and I was like, wow, when I was this age, you know, I'm impressed by them, but when I was this age, I did like switch backside triple, or that's crazy insane. So it is impressive, but you know, when the time you're living it, this moment, it's just like, you're just doing it, you know.
So do you think you've got more Olympics up your sleeve then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you know, this 5th place just got me so motivated to go to Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like realized, you know, it's like, this life is not over yet. I wanna do more of it. You know, I wanna do more contests. Next year we have the World Champs in Salt Lake City. I wanna win that. I wanna win every event pretty much. You know, X Games. I have something to show the world still. You know, in snowboarding before I just stop 100%.
So how do you manage that? I mean, you are obviously living 2 dreams. Most people don't even get to live one of their dreams, but here you are doing 2. I mean, that's all to do with, you know, support from your family and also sponsorship. How easy is it for you to get sponsorship in a sport like snowboarding?
You know, it's for sure, I'm really grateful. That's the first thing. Just be grateful for what you get. And I'm really grateful to have a family that is close to me and, you know, believes in me, because everybody can tell you, oh, this is not good what you're doing, but when your family tells you that, it's really touching your heart, and it's hard to keep going if your family is not behind you. So that's the first really thing I'm grateful about, is having this strong family pushing me. And I mean, the sponsors, they're really important. You know, they get you. You know, when I was 4 years ago, I had this when I was injured, didn't go to the Olympics, one of the thing that kept me going was a sponsor. You know, my main sponsor is Samsung. They told me, Pat, we're not going to kick you out, even though it's like 2 years you didn't do anything. We're going to still like sponsor you, and even better, we're going to give you lessons with Rosanne, which it was a music lesson. You know, they brought me into that, and they wanted to do a story about it, and then she was an incredible keyboard player who played with Prince for a year in America and on the tour, and I got to meet her, and that was the first time I really got into music. So it's even maybe thanks to them that I got into music. But I think that's meant to do with people, you know, that the manager usually, because I mean, every brand can sponsor you and do something not cool about it, you know. But if somebody understands you and just tries to go deeper into this relationship with a sponsor, that's really good for the athletes and for the brand too.
Does it take a certain type of person to do what you do? You're obviously incredibly positive. Do you think luck comes your way because of that attitude?
Oh, for sure. It's all about this. You know, it's in life, if you're negative, nothing comes back. You know, it's like, and even if things come back, you're going to see it in the wrong way. So it's not even coming back, you know, because obviously life's just happening. Whatever happened, you know, life's happening and you're just a part of it. And so you basically decide what event, if it's positive or not. You know, I could get 5th. How many people at the Olympics get 5th and get pissed? Like, oh, I only got 5th. I wanted a medal. And sometimes my head inside tells me, oh, Pat, you were so close to the podium, you could have done it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, it's your way of seeing it, you know. And that's why you have to work on if you want to be successful in life. It's just which way you see things, you know.
We talked a little bit of your struggles in childhood. Do you still have the same struggles nowadays? Do you still always have to be on the go, always looking for the next thing? Is that what kind of pushes you forward in music and sport?
Well, you know, I always want more for sure. And I don't want to satisfy myself, because when you get satisfied, you just like stop doing things, you know. It's important for me to keep going, you know, traveling, meet people, and that's that's the greatest treasure in life, I think. That's what I realized at some point. I was like, I want to delete everything I have back home, you know, not have my own apartment, not have a girlfriend. I want to just, you know, every time I just look forward to travel again. So I'm pretty much like traveling all the time, and that's what makes me so happy. I don't know how long it's gonna last, you know. For now, it's just I just live every day as it should be, you know, like as I just take things coming to me, you know. I just take them, turn them to a positive thing, and then everything works out, you know.
You mentioned the support of your family as well. Tell me about your two brothers. They're really involved in everything that you do. Yeah, so my older brother, I owe him so much because he's the one when I was injured that said, okay, Pat, I'm going to take your stuff now, because he's finished university and he was in the business school, and he said, you know, he wanted to work in a bank when he was at the university, and he did 6 months, earned good money, and then at some point he was like, this is not the life I want to live, you know. He saw me, I think I inspired him because he saw me just living my life, and then he said, I want to live this life too. I want to do something I want to do, you know. And he loves me so much, I love him so much, and then he was, okay, let's start with the social media, let's start with this, with that, and then the sponsorship. And he learned so much, you know, with, now it's been like 3 years. And, so he's your manager, really? He's
my manager, yeah. And we're super close to each other, and he makes, you know, my whole life much better, because I don't have to worry about these little things that are really hard for an athlete, you know. When you get to that level and you have this goal, you can't think about other stuff too. So I just do my thing, he does his thing, and then, you know, with the music I have too much, otherwise I wouldn't make it.
And coming up in the second half of our Newsmaker interview, Pat BURGENER tells us how injuries during his Olympic attempt in the past led him to a love of music and a record deal.
I'm stuck at the red light, there's nothing I can do, we're running out of time, what can I possibly do? I want more from life, but I couldn't even write. I wanna be close to the ones I am loving, but I'm so damn tired of trying.
And don't forget, you can watch us live on YouTube and also check out our website, cnnmoney.ch. We'll take a short weather break now. Don't go away.
CNN Money Switzerland business weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movements and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
Spot Spotlight, CNN Money Switzerland's program dedicated to lifestyle, celebrity, entertainment and culture. We bring you a snapshot of the latest trends in Switzerland and around the world, from Hollywood to design, big names and rising stars, to art collectors and architects. It's right here under the Spotlight.
Spotlight with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland. CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you make sure you're feeling good? We'll be focusing on all the tools available to us today to make sure we're physically and mentally healthy. From monitoring and avoiding disease to reactive and preventative healthcare. In particular, we'll be delving into the latest innovation coming out of Switzerland to ensure a long and healthy life.
Feeling Good with Amanda Kane on CNN Money Switzerland.
Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions to global problems.
International Geneva with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show, where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
Welcome back to the Newsmaker here on the Swiss Pulse. In tonight's interview, Hannah Weiss speaks to Pat BURGENER, a young Swiss snowboarder back home after success at the Winter Olympics in PyeongChang. For years, he has been aiming for Olympic gold, but injury often set him back. Instead of giving up, though, he turned to music. Now, after finishing 5th in the men's snowboarding halfpipe in South Korea, he's home to pursue his other dream, that of music. We pick up the conversation as he tells us about his strong support that he's receiving from his family.
What about your younger brother?
So my younger brother is also, he was at school, and at some point, like, I want to live this life too. So he went to my mother and said, I want to be a musician. And my mother's like, oh, again, one more like him. But, at the end, she couldn't say no, and she was glad to support him.
And you play together?
Yeah, we play together. So now he went to London because I have snowboarding and I do music next to it, so I write songs when I travel. And he wants to become a really good guitar player, so he went to London to music school, and he's just living his dream too. And that's beautiful to see, So he comes back for the shows every time. We're going to write songs together, and it's just, we all live our passions today, and that makes also the whole family just really strong.
You wrote some stuff when you were out in PyeongChang, and you actually released a single called Korea.
Yeah, I wrote the song Korea. I wrote many songs of my album. They're really, my songs are really about my experience that I live with this life, because you learn so much. Sports is like the best way. As I said before, if you don't get into if you don't waste these things you get to learn, if you just realize, and music was the main thing, because I have my book all the time. I started writing, and when you start writing, you can read it back, otherwise you just lose it. And that's my thing. I started writing, and now the best thing is it gets into music, so it's even stronger. I can just listen to it. So yeah, I want to perform a song which is called Lost Time now. Okay. It's a song of my new album, and it's a really strong song about this moments, because obviously life is about up and downs, and whatever happens, even if I would have won gold medal, at some point you go down again, because it's life. You know, you have all this thing up there, and then that's, you know, you go, life just goes on, and you can hold on to this moment all your life. And it's pretty much about this. I wrote this song right after a festival we played last summer, and you know, I had my brothers, the show, it was all great, and then for 5 days I was in a really deep depression, and I could have gone drinking and, you know, partying, but I didn't, because it was the year of the Olympics, and I was like, I have to search something inside of me, you know. And then at the end of these 5 days I wrote this song, which is called Lost Time, and yeah.
I'm stuck at the red light. There's nothing I can do. We're running out of time. What can I possibly do? I want more from life, but I couldn't even write. I wanna be close to the ones I am loving, but I'm so damn tired of trying. Scared to lose time. Scared to face what I'm living. Sometimes I can't back in. Be close to the ones I am loving. So I fall to the ground. Wash my face to wake up, but those dreams keep me awake. And now's the time to clean up before I have to hit the brake. They want me to stay, but my freedom was at stake. 'Cause now I'm going to the ones I am loving, because there's nothing else to take. Scared to lose time. Scared to face what I'm living. Sometimes I get back in. Be close to the ones I am loving. So I fall to the ground. 'Cause there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to relieve the time I've been losing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What extent do you think music has saved you then over the years?
Music is it's such a deep, you know, understanding of yourself, you know. It's a way to connect with what's inside of you and not think about all the stuff disturbing you, you know. Because your mind is always thinking so much, and it's a way of putting all these thoughts into music, and just live. No more thoughts in your head. You know, it's just coming out, and it's the best way to also communicate with the world, you know. It's the most beautiful language that was ever brought into this world, you know. It's music. And every time I travel, I have my guitar. I went in Korea, I was playing, we're gonna put out a video on YouTube, I was playing one of my songs in the streets, and you just see people, the way they react, you know, they just understand you, whatever. They don't speak English, they just speak Korean, but they understand me, you know.
You play in the street, but you also played a concert, didn't you, in PyeongChang?
Yeah, we did 3 shows, and that was incredible too. And actually that was insane, because when you snowboard, you're just like, you feel like a superstar, you know. You're up there and everyone sees you on TV, but you don't get to really connect with the people. And when I got to the first show, it was like straight away like, oh my God, I'm back to a real person, you know. You're not like a superstar snowboarder that is on TV, but you're just you. And when people showed up to the show, you know, it's such a big thing for me, because it's not easy to have, you know, we just kind of an attraction when we snowboard. Like, you know, in the circus, people come see us, but they don't see they don't come to understand what's inside of us. And when people come to my show, it means so much to me.
It's interesting that you go all the way to PyeongChang to be in the Olympics, which, you know, is a massive, huge thing for anybody. But at the same time, you're organising concerts and making sure that you get that musical outlet as well at the same time. I mean, how much effort did you put into arranging these concerts in the run-up?
I had so much effort, you know, because it means a lot to me. And not just, you know, I'm not this guy. I don't want to be this guy, you know, going with my guitar and just playing one little show and just, I was there and, you know, just trying to, for me, music has to be, it's complete, you know, I wanted to go with a full band. And that was really, everyone's like, oh, but, you know, it's expensive, the flights, whatever. So I wanted to, you know, I wanted to make this thing a big thing, and that was the right choice because every day was fully packed in the Swiss house with so many people coming, and it was like a real show. And for me, it was the best way to go from the Olympics back to music, you know, to my second passion. And it's a lot of effort. You know, I even had to pay by myself one of the flights of the musician because they didn't want to pay all the flights. But I just invest. You know, it's so at some point you shouldn't count in life. You know, there's stuff you can't count, and that's what my older brother Mark is really good about because he's a manager, and usually managers they're always like, oh, let's spare some money about this. Let's spare. Yeah. And my brother is always the first one. You know, when we want to do videos on YouTube. I told him, yeah, but let's have a filmer like 50%. He's like, no, we get 100%. You pay him like he deserves to be paid. Oh, but it's expensive. And he's like, Pat, whatever, just do it. If you do something, do it 100%. And that's what I did. And everything I do it this way now because it's the only way you can really be successful at things. And now you're signed by Universal. Yeah. How did that come about? Oh, I have no idea, really. It just happened. And I was really a little anxious, you know, because I've heard so many things about labels that, you know, they want to take you and make you like, you know, not what you are. And actually, when I met the guys, I was really impressed how just chill they are, you know, and they just want me to be, they're not going to make me what I'm not, you know, I'm obviously already something. And that's probably what happens with a lot of new artists that come up and they get signed right away and they don't, you know, they try because they give their best, you know. It's impressive how they work in your way, you know. They want to make you successful, so they try to do their best, but sometimes their best is just the wrong direction and it doesn't work. But for me, it seems like it's been a few months now and it just works perfectly, you know. We just get along really good together, we talk, and everything. I have my artistic direction. I'm free to do whatever I want. So that's the main thing, I think. So what's next for you when it comes to your music? You know, I want to travel. I want to write songs because writing music, you know, the two things I love about music is playing shows because you connect with people and writing music because that's just going to be here forever. And this is the only way to leave a piece of you on this planet. So I want to write songs. I want to go to LA, travel, and do this there because I think I get the right inspiration there. I wrote really two beautiful songs of my last album. I think it's the right place to be. And you have a new album coming out, do you? Yeah, I have my album. It's my first album. It's coming out end of March. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be a really big step, you know, because it's the first. I don't think I even realized how big this is going to be, you know. Right now I'm just like, oh, you know, we're going to do something. I don't see it that big, but I'm sure it's going to explode, you know, especially now with the Olympics. I got to touch so many people, you know, with what happened there. And I know they're all really close to me now. And having, you know, for somebody, it's like, you know, you have this idol, I don't know, like Joe Perry, for example, whatever, whoever, you know, or Justin Bieber. And you say, I love Justin Bieber so much. But all I get to see from him is his music. So he gets his album out, and that's all you get, you know. But imagine for me now, people love me because of snowboarding. And like, oh, I wish I could get something more from him, you know. His T-shirt, that's the beginning. You're like, oh, give me a T-shirt when you're at the contest. And then I even threw my helmet in the people. But that's like, imagine that's such a gift for them, you know, to get something so deep from me. And for me, it's such a gift for me as well to be able to give that to my fans. Do you think you're a bit of a showman then? Oh, sure I am. I love show. You know, I love show. When when I was 18, I did this contest in Zurich, the freestyle stage, like a massive ramp with 40,000 people watching. And since that day, I was performing really well. I tell myself, I want to live this life forever. And when I was getting injured, I saw that this life, this snowboarding life could stop anytime. And that's when I got to the music. And after the first music show, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to keep doing that.
So you've got a new album coming out, your first album. What next for your snowboarding? Can you fit this in amongst all the other things that you've got going on, the travelling, the music?
Yeah, sure. It's the best thing together, because I'm always traveling, obviously, and what gives you music is traveling, and if I don't, and that's why snowboarding just brings me right into the right way to do music, and music the same, it's the best way to relax. When I come home, right now I would be depressed without music. You get back from the Olympics, it's like so much happening, and you're just like, you go back home and then nothing, Sure, you can go see your friends, but that's just like, it's nice, but to me it's just like a time passing. You just go and occupy yourself with something distracting, and I don't want to be distracted. I just want to, all I have in me, I just want to put it into something creative.
You've been very positive throughout this whole interview. You are very open to experiences. You're very, optimistic is a good word to describe you.
Thank you.
Would you change anything?
If I would change anything, I don't think so. I would really, and if I would just do it, That's the thing. When people are like, oh, should I change anything? Then they want to change something. They just don't do it because they feel like it takes time to change, but it doesn't. I could cut my hair right now, and then I'm no more hair. It's just something that you do, and that's what it's actually what I do in my life. When I want to change something, I just do it. And it's like, it's that easy, pretty much. Life is that easy. You just have to change when you want to change. If I want to, I just booked my flight to the US Open yesterday, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to go 4 days to LA. Just whatever happens. I don't even know if I'm going to LA, maybe San Diego, maybe San Francisco. I have no idea. I just know I'm going somewhere, and that's the real life to me. Just go somewhere.
May the luck stay with you, Pat Burgener. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That was our interview with Pat Burgener, not just a great snowboarder, but a great musician as well. In other news, Swiss companies are already well into the earnings season. So how have the figures been stacking up? I earlier talked to Gérard Piasco, the CIO at private bank Merki Baumann, on the results so far and what to expect in the current financial year.
So far, we can say that in Switzerland, the earnings season was good. But the comments and the guidance of the top managers were a bit cautious. And this clearly has to do with the currency situation. And this is a bit similar in some other European countries. And it's a big contrast to the US, where we had such a great earnings seasons with 75% of companies even beating not too low expectations.
Now, as we're already nearing the earnings season here in Switzerland, let's look forward. Do you think that the large caps here in the country are on a healthy track for 2018? Does, the past year, 2017, bode well for the future?
Absolutely. The economic growth is slowly but surely improving in Switzerland as well, but in the world we know IMF has increased the forecast to 3.9%, not only for this year, for next year as well. So it's a good environment from the revenue side. But as I said before, the currency side, we see it in US dollar against Swiss franc, not as helpful as before. That's also true for some other European countries where the euro dollar is too strong. So the currency situation is important for Swiss companies going ahead.
Now, you have mentioned the US market, where we have seen so much volatility since the beginning of the year. And also the SMI has come down a little bit to an 8,900 level. How does the US market outlook continue to impact the SMI performance in your view?
I mean, it's absolutely clear. If you have more than 50% of the world market capitalization coming from the US market, whatever happens in Wall Street has a strong, very strong directional impact on not only the Swiss market, all over Europe. Now we have seen the volatility was by the market participants just anticipated to be too low, right, with the VIX index. That had to be adjusted to a reality where we see interest rates going up. Volatility has to go up as well. It will not be as calm as last year was. So the US market has increased volatility, realized volatility is on an uptrend. It's not over. We are in the consolidation period. That will have an impact both on other European markets and also on the Swiss market.
It's not just Wall Street that impacts the rest of the world, including Switzerland, but also the Fed policy. Now we have the new US Fed head, Jerome Powell. He promises, or it sounds like, the US Fed will keep a very steady policy stance. But how do you think that his policy will impact the Swiss market here at home?
I think the most important we have seen November, it's not a long time ago, the market overall was expecting just about 2 hikes for this year, 2018, then adjusted to an expectation of 3 hikes by the US Central Bank. Now with wage growth, with commodity prices on a stronger uptrend, the market has to get accustomed to, I would say, rather 3 to potentially 4 hikes. That's still healthy. It impacts the currency movements, it impacts the volatility to higher levels, and therefore we have to adjust to this reality. We will not get markets as strong in returns like last year, and particularly not as calm volatility-wise as last year.
Now, you have mentioned the Forex markets, and we have seen the Swiss franc appreciating from a 3-year low against the euro, for example. How will Swiss export companies benefit from, the most recent Forex trends?
For the Swiss exports, clearly, and that's more important for small caps than for the big large caps of the Swiss market index, what is mainly important is the euro against the Swiss franc. That is trending upwards, so the Swiss franc is less strong. That's helpful for Swiss exports and particularly for mid and small caps. Clearly for large caps, what is as important is the dollar. Here we have not exactly the same trend. With increasing volatility, the market's flows go more to safe havens like the Swiss franc or the yen, dollar going down a bit. So we have to differentiate between the large caps and the mid caps going forward for the Swiss equity market.
Before we go, Mr. Piasco, we have seen so much volatility, as we've mentioned right now. What is your piece of advice for investors? Would you, suggest they go more into safe havens like gold and treasury bonds, or do you have any other good tips for them?
You are the best advisor. I agree 100%. What is important if you get more volatility than last year is that you don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Diversify. Bonds, more emerging market bonds. Currencies, more diversified. The cheaper currencies like emerging market currencies rather than the expensive currencies like the US dollar. In the equity markets, clearly diversify also into emerging markets because valuation is cheaper. In the bond markets, take a bit of corporate hybrids, which is benefiting of economic growth. Take a bit of emerging market bonds as well, and particularly local currency emerging markets. So higher volatility, you need more diversification.
Thank you very much for your advice. Now, it's sad but true, the 2018 Winter Olympics are history. My colleague Amanda Kane caught up with our sports correspondent Matt Layton a little bit earlier to wrap things up.
Matt, I can't believe it. It seems to have all been over so quickly. The PyeongChang Games now all over behind us. I mean, what can you say really came out of it? Was it a success for Switzerland?
I think in many terms it was a safe games, wasn't it? It was a nice games. Not particularly sure if I like that word. And for Switzerland, I suppose it was a success. The first week was a bit worrying. OK, there was some cancellations. And eventually, as we all know, because they won a couple more medals over the weekend, they had 15 medals, which everyone's saying, wow, it's the best since 1988 Calgary. To be fair, it's the same. However, in Calgary, they only had 46 medals given out. This time they had 102. So it's certainly going in the right direction. Was it a classic games? Not so sure. I'll tell you why. The challenge is athletes, families and friends. I think they had a whale of time actually out there. television viewers, clearly with the technology going forward, I think that was wonderful as well. For me, the missing link, and I wasn't there, as we know, so I can't have, and this is basically people I've actually spoken to, the fan experience. I was in Vancouver and had been involved in several of other major games, obviously London and Rio, where I was both times, and that was a massive family country affair. Everyone had a whale of a time. I'm just not convinced that happened this time. There wasn't sort of spontaneous outbursts of joy. So I would give it like 7 out of 10, I suppose.
Nonetheless, all over now for another 4 years, next time in Beijing. Looking back in history, though, not just from Switzerland's point of view, but just generally, how do you think the Games will be viewed in PyeongChang a few years from now?
I think it could, well, history will tell us in a few weeks, months, years' time. But I certainly think the challenges that everyone was experiencing with North Korea and obviously their nuclear aspirations, that was a major feature before the Games, and it hasn't really been mentioned since. Clearly, at the end, there was Donald Trump's daughter. We saw at the beginning, there was the leader of North Korea's sister there. So potentially, it's a massive breakthrough Games. And it just shows you how absolutely important the IOC is as a political organisation, which I suppose it's a facilitator, isn't it? It puts things together. So I suppose in years to come, South Korea will remember the Games were there, only because it's next to North Korea, to be fair. The competition was good. We saw the new generation coming through, which is very dynamic and exciting with some new sports. We saw the old generation sometimes falling off a little bit, sometimes clinging on. But in general, I think what we can remember from the Games, yes, political breakthrough, exciting moments, and a couple of tear-jerking moments. And the Swiss are really good at those. Dalian Colonia, when he won, he cried. We had Simon Ammann freezing to death on the ski jump, and a few other moments with Dominique Giselle and her sister, both crying. So high emotions for Switzerland, I suppose.
Nothing like a few tears. Now, the Olympics may be over and behind us, but the Paralympics are coming up in a few days' time, also in PyeongChang. Will they keep that Swiss village that they built there for that one?
It's quite an interesting situation because you have about 1/100th of the TV coverage. Swiss TV are still deciding exactly what they're going to cover, but it's equally fun. It's a really dynamic deal. Numbers are clearly going to be a bit less. In the able-bodied, Switzerland had 169. In the powers, they have 13 athletes going out. 5 of them are from Swiss curling. There's less events. Clearly, there's going to be there's alpine skiing, where they actually set you into 3 systems. You're standing, you're sitting, or you're visually impaired. But for the actual athletes going out, it is an absolutely cracking performance. And we're going to be following the Swiss athletes. The event starts in 10 days' time. The first Para Games were in 1976, where they had loads and loads of different events. They've pulled them all together now. So clearly, certain advantages of certain athletes are going to be beneficial to them. But it's one of those things. I think we're going to fall in love with the emotion and the dynamic, sort of carefree attitude of all these athletes that are going to be going from the 9th until the 18th of March. The Swiss delegation, by the way, they fly out on the 3rd of March, so we'll certainly be keeping you up to date. And we do have, realistically, 2 medal hopefuls that we'll be filling you into a little bit later on.
And when we speak in a few weeks' time and it's all over, do you think you'll be able to give it more than a 7 out of 10 like you gave the Olympics?
My personal feelings on this. I was actually I was involved in the Rio Olympics, where I was in the canoeing event, in the speaker. And for the actual able-bodied Olympics, it was fun. But I would say with the less resources for the powers they went out to as well, it was 11 out of 10. So hopefully this can live up to the same thing. It's a lot more honest, it's a lot more pure emotion, and people are in it for the right reasons.
Very good. Thanks very much, Matt.
And we'll definitely keep an eye on the Paralympics as well. Now, that's it from us here on the Swiss Pulse and the Newsmaker. Don't forget, you can watch us live on YouTube and check out our website, cnnmoney.ch. Have a great and warm night. Temperatures are going to fall sub-0 degrees again, so stay warm and have a good night. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.
News programmes are usually full of short stories that hardly go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture. Every weekday evening at 7 p.m, The Big Picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests who take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The Big Picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Oh,
Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
It's 9 a.m. here in New York. I'm Maggie Lake, live at the New York Stock Exchange. Coming up this hour, taking a stand. More U.S. companies sever ties with the NRA amid calls for greater gun control. No way out. The Weinstein Company is expected to file for bankruptcy after failing to find a buyer. And going mobile, smartphone makers unveil the latest technology at the industry's biggest show. Businesses are under increasing pressure to take a stand on gun control following the school shooting in Florida. More than a dozen companies have cut ties with the NRA after activists flooded social media calling for them to end partnerships with America's most powerful gun lobby. Christine Romans joins me from New York. And Christine, this is a more vocal response from the business community than we've seen in the wake of other mass shootings.
Yeah, there's a tipping point here for many of these companies, and it's because of social media. I mean, you really see a lot of people on social media demanding these companies cut ties with the NRA. What kind of ties am I talking about? I'm talking about discounts for membership, lower rates for insurance, discounted flights for trips to the NRA national conventions and the like. I can show you some of the names of these companies, more than a dozen now. Delta, United, the Allied Van Lines, some Norton, that's the antivirus software made by the company Symantec. And right there in the middle of your screen, you'll see First National Bank. This is an Omaha bank that had a Visa card, an NRA-branded Visa card. They will not renew that contract. Here's what Delta said just yesterday. This is the most recent company to do this. Delta is reaching out to the NRA to let them know we will be ending their contract for discounted rates through our group travel program. We'll be be requesting that the NRA remove our information from their website. A similar statement from United Airlines. You know, Maggie, this is an interesting response, I think, because you have seen companies over the past few years get more involved in things that are social issues, right? Gay marriage, climate change, and now gun violence. Not necessarily advocating positions on gun control, but certainly listening to their customers who say, look, you know, the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment, but you don't need to be offering discounts for NRA members. You know, you can get out of that business, and many of them are. This is what the NRA says. They say that this is cowardly. They say some corporations have decided to punish NRA membership in a shameful display of political and civic cowardice. In time, these brands will be replaced by others who recognize that patriotism and determined commitments to constitutional freedoms are characteristics of a marketplace they very much want to serve. And I will say, Maggie, there is a counter push on social media right now of those who are saying, look, thank you for publishing the names of all these companies who are severing ties with the NRA. These are companies that I will now boycott. Those are people who are gun rights advocates, Maggie.
It's interesting because the companies, I would have loved to have heard the conversation around the boardroom about this, Christine, because we know anytime they do this that they risk the possibility of a backlash. One has to think, though, that the message coming through from their customers was overwhelmingly on one side of the debate for them to take this financial risk.
It was, and I'm going to play, I don't know, maybe not devil's advocate's not the right word, but I'm going to play cynic here and say that you have a very large, vocal, young population of people who are going to be customers for the rest of their lives for these companies. So I think that there is a millennial and even younger than millennial cohort that is very, very important here for many of these companies. And I'm sure if you're planning out to the future, that's a group that you don't want to alienate.
And it's interesting, it is really the beginning of them exercising their political voice in a way we haven't heard before, perhaps, but also their pocketbook. We really haven't seen this much before. On the LGBT rights, maybe we start to see it, but this is a very, very direct tie. These young activists are making a connection and saying, follow the money. We are, and we're your customer, and it's proving to be very powerful so far. Interesting to watch, Christine. Thanks so much. Wonder if this is the beginning of a new phase for corporate America. Now, gun control takes center stage in Washington today. President Trump plans to talk to governors about the issue, saying he'd support stricter laws. Jeremy Diamond is in Washington. Jeremy, you know, a lot of governors have been sort of out vocal, and gun laws have mostly been left to the states to deal with because Congress has been unable or unwilling to come up with comprehensive legislation. What kind of changes is the president going to be suggesting, and what do we think that the reception is going to be like?
Well, we know that in the last week, the president has really ramped up his expressions of support for certain changes in how the country deals with these kinds of shootings, and in some instances, for some changes in the nation's gun laws. We saw that the president has expressed some tepid support for raising the minimum age for purchasing weapons to 21. He's also been extremely vocal, of course, about hardening schools, including giving guns to certain teachers in classrooms to help them better defend students against these potential school shooters. That is the most controversial notion that the president currently supports, but it is also the one for which he's been most vocal about, saying that that is how he feels is the best way to address these shootings. But he has expressed an openness to a lot of ideas, and we expect him to discuss some of those ideas with governors from across the country today at the White House. The question is what can actually get passed through Congress. We've seen the discussions on Capitol Hill begin to ramp up. There is, of course, this bill to improve the federal background check system, but it is quite limited. The president has said that he would support a more comprehensive change to the background check system, but it's unclear exactly what that means. And so while we've seen the president express support for various measures, we don't yet have a sense of specifically what he is willing to stake his neck out for in order to get it passed through Congress or to encourage these governors to get done in their own states.
Yeah, Jeremy, I mean, supporting something is one thing. The president pushing and taking a leadership role in insisting in change, something very different.
That's right. We have at least seen him, though, take a leadership role as far as creating a conversation here or encouraging a conversation. You know, last week we saw him at the White House with some of these victims of past school shootings, including the Parkland school shooting, survivors of that incident, and family members of some of the victims. And today we're seeing him continue to press forward that conversation with this meeting with governors from across the country. So while in the past, after previous school shootings, we've seen the president sometimes say, listen, we need changes in mental health laws. You know, this isn't a gun issue. Today, what we're seeing is a little bit different from President Trump, and that is actually a willingness to have this conversation and really taking a leadership role in at least encouraging that conversation. Where that actually leads, though, is still a big question mark, Maggie.